Morning. I call the meeting to order. Our flag pledge will be led by Commissioner Lipke today.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, all, and I would remind all of you, both in the gallery and on my fellow commissioners, to please silence your cell phones. And we have the agenda before you. I believe there were 2 modifications, and those would be an additional item to Public Works on considering an amendment to H1 on the MnDOT agreement 1034758, and I think our administrator has a recycling contract update.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. With those in mind, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Move it.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Introduction of new employees. I see Cassie back there. It must be time. Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning all.
Good morning.
And
I will
welcome.
actually-
Cassie, I think you have some introductions you'd like to make.
Yes, well, this morning actually we only have one new introduction, so I would ask Jennifer to do us the honor.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. I'm here to introduce our newest employee, Lisa Walter. Lisa began employment with Nicollet County on November 1st. She is a certified assessor and a case manager care coordinator, which is a lot of titles. But suffice it to say that she is working with our over 65 population and has come to us from Blue Earth County with that same job experience.
Good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself, if you'd be so kind.
I'm a St. Peter native, grew up here, and have a family. We live just outside of town, 2 boys who are active in sports, and previously worked in Blue Earth County for 17 years. Started in child protection and then moved to supportive housing, working with chronically homeless and chemically dependent individuals. And now the last 5 years in Blue Earth County was working with the elderly and public health unit, and really have a passion for working with the elderly and making sure they have a good quality of life.
Thank you for returning to the fold. I appreciate that. Well, thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. You have before you consent agenda. I'd entertain a motion for the same.
I'll move the consent agenda.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion is passed unanimously. This is the section of our meeting where we will entertain any public appearances. We would ask you to please step forward, have a seat, identify yourself by name and address, and state your topic. We will give you the opportunity to speak. We ask you to try and limit your conversations to be between 3 and 5 minutes, if you can, and just that's how we'll proceed. So, who's up first? Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Jane Ilders. I'm here to discuss the solar garden that's being put up near Cortland Township. Do I begin or?
Well, I just need your address for the record.
48124 501st Lane, Cortland.
Perfect, thank you. Proceed, please.
So a group of us neighbors came to the Planning and Commissioner meeting, and we had all kinds of questions, and we don't feel that all of our questions were addressed. So we're hoping that this platform we can present those questions. Because previously when we attended township meetings, or there was a meeting at the end of our driveway with Mandy and one of the gentlemen's back here, we asked various questions. We were told that we had to come to the Planning and Commissioner meeting to discuss them. Well, we brought forth our questions, and the only item that was really discussed was the road washout. So I guess I'd like to take this time to understand, is this the platform to go through those questions, or where is the appropriate place to go through our concerns?
Ma'am, we don't answer any questions here at this forum, but we're just here to hear your comments.
So where do we go to get our answers addressed with the solar farms that are coming in? Because everywhere we go, we're being told we have to come to this meeting, and If we can't get anything answered, then what's the appropriate means to do that? The solar farm developer has been able to present information to you and pull all that information together, but we as the property owners that are adjacent, we have nowhere to go to express our concerns or get our answers to our questions. So I'm asking, how do we deal with that? We have a lot of concerns. I don't know if you guys are even familiar with the particular area that this is being put in. It's not a regular field that it's going into. It's a field that we're getting all the water runs through all of our properties. So I guess I'm going to stop before I jump into more concerns. I think we're due as property owners to get our answers addressed. Where do we go for that?
May I offer?
Please.
If I wasn't at planning and zoning, it'd be helpful to hear your concerns, because this will be the first time I've heard from you.
Sure.
And if you have questions, tell us what those questions are. That would be helpful.
Sure. So should I begin?
Please.
Okay, so first of all, we discussed, as I mentioned, there's going to be lots of road washout coming into our area. I did bring a picture of our current area. As you can tell, there is a hillside here, so all the water washes through, and this is the culvert that it currently comes into play. This culvert runs into two different landowners' property. There's actually a culvert.
If I have copies for you, can I give this?
If you'd like to distribute them, that's fine.
I can give them to you?
Please.
I have copies of all the pictures that she's gonna show.
Thank you.
Okay. So as you can see, we do not have a large ditch here. It is a flat area on that first picture. There is nowhere for that water to even catch or go. It's gonna, as you can see in this picture, it actually ran over the road. If you look at the next picture, the solar garden is proposing that there's going to be a row of dogwoods that are added to the side of our road, which is great. We're pleased that this is going to cover the area, but look what happens with the dogwoods. It's going to catch a whole lot of snow. So you add all of that extra moisture, how much more is that going to run through our road? There's only a 12-inch basin that's being added in the solar garden. It's going to overflow, and we're going to be washing out that road repeatedly. You'll notice in the next picture, there's a little tile here. This runs under one of the property owners' roads. And so again, if you continue to push water through that area, it has potential to wash out this driveway. Who's going to be responsible for paying for that driveway with all of that washout? The next picture, the dark area, you'll notice is part of the ravine. You'll notice that there is some washout already. Again, you're going to have all of this extra snow collecting in that area. It's going to continue to wash it out. If you look really closely, there's some little diamonds glistening in there. There's just a little stream of water right now. That's typical for this time of the year. But once we start getting that snow melt, we go from almost a dry, trickling creek bed to 4 to 6 feet of water that is running through and gushing. So again, you have that extra snow melt. Where's it going to go? Another one of our concerns was property values. So according to the last meeting, the solar developer had mentioned that he's not aware of any home values being affected. Well, I can assure you, this picture shows a little farm here, and these are all the solar gardens around it. Who's going to want to buy that farmland? So us as property owners, the Greebles are starting with a 1 megawatt farm. That's only the beginning. We've researched these. We know how these go. They start with 1 to get the approval, which I'm not quite sure why the county only starts with 1. And then they can go ahead and install up to 3 more and then change developers and add more. So before long, we're going to be surrounded. This is a picture of what we call the Rainstar Farm in Nicollet County. The next picture depicts where the current solar gardens is surrounding that farm. And this is our area here that the new solar farm is being presented. So as you can see, another one of our concerns is that at what point is Nicollet County going to be oversaturated with these solar gardens? Is there a limit? We know we're prime area. We have a power station just down the road, so we're being targeted heavily. There's rules and regulations for the number of hog farms that can be put into the area. Why are there not rules and regulations on these solar farms? At what point are we way too many? The ring store farms are adding up to 2 more that we're aware of. Enters are adding one south of Nicollet. Blooms are adding one. Our area is just getting pummeled with them. When's enough? This next picture indicates all the land that the Griebels do own that could potentially be put into the solar gardens. As I mentioned, there's 1 megawatt that's approved or going through the planning and approval right now. This is what our future could be. When is enough enough? Not to mention, there's actually a little church and school, not even a quarter mile of the way away. So there's some other hazardous materials that I'll be getting into. At what point is enough enough? These school children should not be put at a health risk either. I'm going to skip over this next one.
Man, we need you to wrap up here shortly.
The other concern is that we understand that these solar panels contain Gen X and PFAS chemicals. Now, the solar developer indicated that he's not aware of any issues with the manufacturing of the solar panels, but as we've been doing our research, these Gen X and PFAS chemicals have been coming out, and they're nasty. So I guess what research and what developments are being done by the county to make sure that these solar panels do not have any of those effects on them either. Because they can pollute our lands, and they are long-lasting. They don't go away. They can cause health effects, which again, we have that school that's not even half a mile away from the solar farm. And there's more being added. So why would we even want to have the risks that go along with it? We also talked about the current bond is stated at $25,000 for decommissioning. So that's what's stated for right now. What's the worth of that going to be in 20 years when it needs to be decommissioned? Our inflation and the cost that goes with that, that's not even going to come near to covering it. And then what happens when that $25,000 is used up? Who takes care of the rest of the cost? Also, the zoning, the land is no longer agriculture, so why is it not being taxed commercially? It's not going to grow crops, so why should the solar farm be taxed agricultural? And again, the people that are putting the solar farms up don't even live near the solar farms. In this case, the Griebels live in the city of Cortland. They don't even need to feel the effects of the solar farms. First of all, it's an eyesore. I'm still convinced there's going to be health issues in the future. It's going to take years for that to come into play. This isn't going to be something that's going to show up in the next year. We as property owners, as I say, all that water is going to run through all of our land and property, and we're the ones that are going to get it in our water table. We're going to feel the effects of any electromagnetic materials that are coming off of these solar farms. We're the ones that are going to have the problems. The landowners, the property owner that's putting up the solar farms is not. Thank you.
Additional speakers? Morning.
Scott Flowers, 48014 501st Lane, Cortland, Minnesota. I'm an adjacent property owner. Jane had reiterated on some of this stuff that for the water issues. The tiles that are feeding what she's talking about, there's a 3-foot tile on one side of the road and then there's a 2-foot tile on the other side of the road. These have been upsized in the last 10 years, which that 3-foot tile, when it plugs, it cannot take the water that's coming from all the fields that is already, which has washed that road out twice already. my situation is that I have a 3-foot tile under my driveway now that's being fed by a 3-foot tile and a 2-foot tile, and they've tiled 5 other fields into this. So when that actually plugged up and washed, we had 30 feet of water on the north side of our driveway that almost washed my driveway out. Which this is going to continue on because there's going to be such a snow base that's going to happen in this particular corner and where that tile is feeding through my property. The other issue I have with this whole situation is that we're not looking at the future part of this. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon as far as solar energy and renewable resources, etc. But we're not looking at the fact that what are we doing in this stuff in 25 years? We have to dispose of that. If you look at the information that's out there right now, the solar farms that are being generated right now will take 300 times more waste than what a nuclear power plant will take. So, and at least the nuclear power plant, heavy metals is being monitored. This stuff's just going to go in a landfill. And that's the same thing that's happening with wind generators, all the fiberglass that comes off of those big wind things. That stuff, when it deteriorates, they take them off and they bury it in a landfill. So is that, how ecological is that? I mean, we have to look at the big picture of this whole thing. I mean, they said Roundup was safe once. We're finding that out, that it's not. And I think that's the situation that we're in right now. I mean, they can tell you what these things are made out of, but yet no one is going and actually checking to make sure that this is actually what's being done. Because we had that discussion with the installer of this particular unit and said that there are no heavy metals used in this particular form. Other companies use heavy metals all the time. Now, what are we actually checking on? Is it actual true, or is it just smoke and mirrors to get this thing going? And no one's looking into any of this before it's just approved. And somehow we have to have that at least looked at. I mean, we're not getting any answers from any of this. We just get an approval. Okay, so now we're going to build a solar farm. And if it was done to every one of you people and done in your front yard, you were going to have something to say about it. This doesn't have to happen. And it is being targeted, like she said, on the line that it's on. It's not happening all over the county. It's happening in our area just because of where it's at. And it's so appealing. It's all about money. But what about us as a property owner? Don't we have any rights? I mean, you have rights when you're living in town. Your neighbors can't do things that are going to offend your property. But yet we can do that out here and do whatever we want. That's not fair to the rural property owners, because I'm not a farmer. I'm not a solar farmer. But yet I'm going to have everything in my face every day for the next 25 years. And when that's decommissioned, it'll be nothing but a junk hole, because they will not have $25,000 to pick this up. It's going to cost so much more. With the price of inflation, it'll cost frickin' $500,000 by that time. And do they have a liability insurance? Do they have? No one has proved anything as far as cancer causing or anything else by living by these. Do they have to have a liability insurance for the next 25 years so that everyone from our generation and the next generation are covered by their liability, because they're the ones installing it? Whether that goes on the landowner or that goes on the people installing it. But even that at $1 million wouldn't even be enough in the next 25 years. And at some point in time, I mean, we do have to have our neighbors. We have to be friendly to our neighbors. And this is not being friendly to the neighbors. And when you have a town that's regulated, everybody has to go by a certain thing. And out here, it's just a free-for-all, and I don't understand that. I've lived out there for 33 years. And not once has anybody ever been concerned about me as just a rural property owner. They want to put more water through my driveway, they do it. Everything happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janelle Bodie, 48014 501st Lane. And I wanted to just say, I agree with everything they said, and I'm not sure if any of you have access to the meeting notes from last Monday. We asked a lot of questions, a lot. So there should be a record somewhere, as I would assume, and then the voting just went on and we didn't get any answers. So I'd like this to go on record. We need answers for this because we've dished out a lot of money having to get our road fixed. I want to know who's going to pay for it, who's going to give me money when there's health concerns, school children, anything that comes up. We're the ones living right there that have to deal with it. And I want you all to pretend you're living right next door. You have kids in the school, grandchildren, whatever, and think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional from your group? I was trying to stay within the group here. So, did you have something, sir?
Yes.
Please come sit down and identify yourself.
Glenn Eilders, 48124 501st Lane.
Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning. I just have the same concerns as they do. I don't understand why this is taxed as an agricultural versus a commercial. I would like to know why LeSueur and Blue Earth County put a moratorium on these things. It just, I mean, there needs to be some answers. We went to that other meeting, we got no answers. I mean, I don't get it, so. That's it.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah?
I reside in 12392 135th Avenue, Hanscom, Minnesota. So I am not part of Nicollet County. I am part of Brown County. As far as I know, there hasn't been a whole lot talked in Brown County, but I do know, as having my sister and my mom and dad living in Nicollet County, it does affect them. And me, I want to move closer to my family. I don't want to drive all the way to Hanscom. I want to move to Nicollet County. And putting all of these solar farms up, why would I want to move to Nicollet County and have solar panels as my front view? When, like we said, when is it going to stop? They just keep adding and adding and adding. I want to buy a place out there. I don't even know where to buy the place because is there going to be a solar farm next door? What's stopping all of this? So that's my concern. I'm glad that I don't live in Nicollet County right now because it's just getting out of hand. And I hope that you guys can see that there needs to be some regulations. You need to control this. We can't just keep adding them. Thank you.
Thank you. Procedurally, I'm just trying to stay on topic. Is there anyone that would like to speak to this issue as long as we have a trend here? If not, thank you for your commentary. Is there any other commentary on any of the other issues that you would like during the open session? I see heads bouncing there, so please come forward, identify yourself, and give us an indication of your topic.
Great. Hi, my name is Rachel Belvedere, and I am a current student at Gustavus Adolphus College, 800 West College Ave. And the topic that I am hoping to discuss today is neonicotinoid use and the effects on human health and environmental health.
Okay.
So I'm here with a couple of my fellow students at Gustavus, and we are definitely coming here as learners and wanting to engage with the wider community. We, as students, have been studying the effects of neonicotinoid use on water quality and pollinators, and we're concerned about how those effects are affecting our overall community and the farmers and human health. We are really, we care about the people here and the land here, and we're just really wanting to know what is assisting farmers in a transition away from neonicotinoid use. Of course, we know that the situation for farmers is very difficult with such small profit margins, and how are agriculturists able to be stewards of the land if there aren't programs to help them with transitions away from neonicotinoid use. So one thing that we have really are hoping to advocate for is an integrated pest management system and ways to implement that in a way that is accessible to farmers financially. We have looked into the USDA's Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and we know that that's something that's open to people across the country, but we're wondering how are farmers in Nicollet County and people here able to access funds or access programs that are able to help them in that transition. Overall, we're just really concerned with how some of the main effects with how these chemicals affect the pollinators, specifically with they have neurotoxic effects which bind to the insect's receptors, and then this is also present in mammals, and we know that pollinators specifically, that's really important for a huge percentage of our food production. And so we just really feel like not only is this something that's affecting people here and affecting the health of humans and the water quality here, but also on a worldwide scale of how are we producing food and supporting people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, neonicotinoid is insecticide.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sorry. Yep. Thank you.
Nicotine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any of your additional fellow students like to address us? Do you have other?
I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Additionally, do we have any other input as part of our public forum? Hearing none and seeing none, we will continue on the agenda.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I did.
Good morning.
I have several items here this morning. I wanted to start out with an informational topic addressing the billing and accounting issues that the Department of Human Services has shared with counties. So I have a few numbers to share, and I also have a little bit of background in each of the areas. So to start with, on November 18th, counties received communication from Commissioner Harpstead indicating that as part of her 90-day plan to evaluate billing and payment problems in the Department of Human Services, there were 3 issues identified likely to impact county budgets at this time. The first one is the county share for substance use disorder institutes of mental disease. So our treatment services for our qualified clients are funded through the Consolidated Chemical Dependency Treatment Fund. You'll hear that referred to as CCDTF frequently. The federal government through Medicaid reimburses the state a percentage for these treatment services. So in general, CCDTF is made up of federal, state, and county shares when we're paying for treatment. However, the federal government does not allow Medicaid funds to be used for treatment programs that are identified as Institutes for Mental Disease, or IMDs. Those are typically hospital, nursing facilities, or other institutions that are 17 or more beds. So in their research, it appears that from January 2014 through May of 2019, the state used federal Medicaid funds to pay substance use disorder treatment in these settings and is now required to reimburse the federal government for those use of funds. As a result, then the county share was underestimated for those years, and we are required to pay that portion. For Nicollet County, that cost is $22,172.06. We don't yet know a plan for reimbursement, we just know the amount. For the second area, the Title IV e-payments. So those are federal funds that we receive to assist in costs for out-of-home placement, particularly in group homes, residential treatment centers, shelters, and other group settings. There are many standards that have to be met in order to use these funds, including household income, which requires a great deal of cooperation from our clients with no benefit to them. These funds are accessed on a limited basis at this point because the criteria is still based on the criteria that was set in 1986. So this means that a lot of our families and related out-of-home placements don't qualify for us to be able to use these funds. The Federal Families First Prevention Services Act now requires facilities with these out-of-home placements to use enhanced background checks, looking at fingerprinting and criminal record checks of national crime information and child abuse registry checks. The discrepancy occurred when state law was amended for this to go into effect on July 1st of 2019, whereas state statute also gave facilities until March 1st of 2020 to come into compliance. The state is now indicating that everything after the July 1st deadline, the reimbursements for out-of-home placement or not, for facilities not in compliance will not be reimbursed. At this time, there are no facilities in the state that were in compliance, so all of our funding will not be reimbursed for these last 6 months. Since July 1st of 2019, Nicollet County has had 5 out-of-home placements that qualified for Title IV e-funding. We've already been reimbursed for $46,852, and for the remaining months of 2019, we would have been reimbursed approximately $86,981.08. So this is a 6-month total of $133,833.96. At this point, we're continuing to submit our claims in hopes that there will be a resolution at some point, but we don't yet know what the plan will be for us to refund the state those funds, and we're trying to budget for the rest of the year without those reimbursements. As an additional informational note, the Federal Families First Prevention Services Act will further change the availability of these funds in 2021. These funds that are currently used to help us pay for out-of-home placements will be shifted and be used for preventative services instead. While we're excited about funding for preventative services, we're worried about the availability of those preventative services in our region, as well as the loss of funding to help us with out-of-home placement costs. And the third topic in the communication was the cash assistance overpayment recovery. And this was a law in 2016 where if there were errors made, participants had previously been paying the state if they received an overpayment, if it was the county's error or the state's error. If at this point, that is no longer the case, and DHS is telling us that through their guidance, it did result in some program participants having to refund money that they should not have needed to refund. We don't yet know the process for identifying who those people are in Nicollet County or how we will work with the state to issue reimbursement to those participants. At this point, we assume that the greatest barrier for us will be employee time in our income maintenance and collections teams. So that is the information that I have at this time, and we will continue to update the board as we receive more. Are there any questions about that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned 3 areas. I'm not going to focus on the third because you just mentioned that's employee time. I'm going to go on the assumption that this was not a county error in 1 or 2, but rather a DHS error. Is that
Correct.
fair?
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're hearing is that the DHS error at the state level is going to cost us at the county level.
Yes, exactly. We have several counties who are saying that they don't want to make any payments of any kind until the Department of Human Services is done combing through any potential accounting errors that exist. We're assuming if there are some that have us owing money to the state, that there likely could be some that result in counties not having received some funds that they could have. And, you know, at this point, our 2020 budget, as you well know, is very completed. There's not a lot of wiggle room, and our out-of-home placements are skyrocketing this year. So I think we're going to have a very difficult time finding those funds.
Mr. Chair, if I just might observe that the state budget has a surplus.
I agree, but I do have one brief question on the availability of, quote, qualified programs that didn't exist. How does DHS reconcile that with the counties. We were doing placements which we thought were correct, and now they're telling us, and appears to continue with the processes, there are no certified givers.
For the out-of-home placements,
Right.
correct, yes. And we don't know how long it will take for providers to come in compliance, given that they had a March 2020
So in
deadline
other words,
previously.
we're kind of left to dangle, but we could still place where we have been placing, but simply nearly at our cost.
Correct. And as you can see, that large amount for 6 months is only for 5 children.
Exactly. And this has been an ongoing issue, and we've had this bubble continue to process through our budgets in the past also, so. Stay tuned, apparently, is the best we can say right now.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other additional questions? Your next item?
Okay. My next item is the 2020 Child Welfare and Juvenile Justice Screening Grant Award. So on an annual basis, the Department of Human Services provides us grant dollars for the provision of mental health screenings, assessments, and referrals for diagnostic assessment and or treatment for children. We work within the child welfare and juvenile justice populations. Our grant award for this year is $31,633. I wanted to point out that that's a $20,000 increase due to diligent reporting and coding efforts made by our staff members in the last year. The funds are anticipated to be used for the provision of clinical therapy for uninsured and underinsured children, as well as family-based decision services and clinical supervision of our mental health staff members. I am requesting approval of the DHS screening grant budget and acceptance of the grant award.
I'll move it.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Then have the 2020 master contract for MFIP-DWP and notice of funds available. So attached you had the annual master contract agreement for the contract between Nicollet County and the Minnesota Valley Action Council. And this is something that I was at board last month for to amend the contract for 2019. So the numbers are shared within here and are the same for how we ended the 2019 year. Again, I would point out that with those budgets, we have $39,515 that we did move to Minnesota Valley Action Council for them to provide enhanced program services, including interpreter services and collaboration with the Minnesota Council of Churches, Area Adult Learning Cooperative, and local transportation partners. The only other changes to the 2020 contract include removal of supported work program language, as that is no longer a separate program, language directing the budget to follow the notice of funds available, noting that Minnesota Valley Action Council would come to Nicollet County if they used those funds for anything outside of the scope that was identified, and quarterly meetings between MVAC and Nicollet County Health and Human Services. So I would be requesting approval of the 2020 master contract and notice of funds available for MFIP-DWP.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of the question after.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Commissioner, your question.
Thank you. The working relationship between Minnesota Valley Action Council and Nicollet County hopefully is good. I serve on both boards. If you could just speak to that.
Sure. Over the last year, I think that we've worked very closely together to make sure that we are providing quality services to those that we serve, as well as having professional relationships. They've started providing us very regular data, and our income maintenance team meets with their staff members regularly to go over program requirements and client needs.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the update.
Any additional? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I then have the South Central Community-Based Initiative 2020 Purchase of Service Agreement. I don't think I need to read all of the background of this, but this is the cooperative agreement for our region to have the SCCBI receive the Department of Human Services grants and manage those for the region. Through this grant, we have $229,082 annually and $20,000 annually for the Power Up Clubhouse. This grant was first signed in May of 2019 when the SCCBI kind of changed format. So there are no changes to this contract other than dates for the 2020 calendar year.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second in the comment.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Laura.
Just want to praise the work of the folks at Power Up Club. I had a chance to visit with them and do wonderful work.
They really do. Thank you.
Anything else? I would second that commentary. You're a huge effort, and we do appreciate it.
Yes.
Clients appreciate it, so thank you for that. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
And lastly, I have the purchase of service agreement for the Brown County Evaluation Center. So the Brown County Evaluation Center continues to be our provider for detoxification and evaluation services. Nicollet County Health and Human Services receives the purchase of service agreement annually. This contract is similar to previous contracts, noting a change from $430 to $443 per patient for 24 hours. Nicollet County is required to pay this cost and attempts to recover the cost through internal collections process. So far in 2019, we have had 50 client stays. We have invoiced $39,700 and received payment of $13,728. And I would note that we have seen an increase in the number that we are able to collect due to implementing the use of credit card collections. So I would be requesting approval of the 2020 purchase of service agreement.
Entertain a motion.
So-
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Any questions?
Question,
Commissioner Kohler?
thank you, Mr. Chair, this relationship has gone on for many years, and so when people are intoxicated, they're brought to this place in New Ulm, right?
Correct.
To hold. Is there any way, shape, or form, why doesn't Blue Earth County, or does Blue Earth County have one of these facilities?
I think the only one in our area is actually here in Brown County. There are some further away, so
And-
this is what we tend to utilize.
And why don't counties like LeSueur, Brown, or LeSueur, Sibley, Nicollet, Faribault, Waseca, surrounding counties have these type of facilities?
I can't speak to why they don't have the facilities. What I could say is that I think it's a very complex type of facility to open. The state guidelines with substance use disorder reform are making it very difficult to find staffing. They'll have to start requiring nursing services around the clock, and for the low amount of reimbursement they receive, that's very complicated.
Mr. Chair, does Brown County actually own it, or is it just called Brown County?
I believe it's just called Brown County.
Yes.
Because it's got a separate board.
Okay, it's not the.
It does have.
Correct, I think.
Yeah, it has a separate, I would parallel it to Sioux Trails format or other things like that, but
Sure.
with, I believe, most of the membership are private, or I should say their board is a private operation.
Mr. Chair, it's only about a block from Nicollet County.
Yeah.
So, if I could, Mr. Chair,
Please.
how many people can be held at that place on a 24-hour hold? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't actually know that, no. I believe that it is based on what their staffing patterns are.
Yeah.
However, I could ask and provide that
If you
information.
don't mind, I'm just wondering how big of a facility it is, unless Sheriff
I think
Dave.
Sheriff Lang might have the answer.
I don't know the exact number of beds, but I think it's right around 12 or so. And a number of years ago, they did open a facility in Mankato, but it wasn't cost effective for them. And just so you're also aware that I do sit on the board for that detox center.
If we could, the record reflect that the sheriff said there were about 12.
Right.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kolar, it's a co-ed 16-bed locked facility, and it serves Blue Earth, Brown, Faribault, LeSueur, Lincoln, Lyon, McLeod, Martin, Murray, Nicollet, Pipestone, Redwood, Brock, Scott, Sibley, and Watonwan counties.
Thank you, Mr. Google.
Yeah. Well, but it's a reflection of what Cassie has already indicated to us, is the fact is that the need level and the cost, it would be very prohibitive for each county to maintain
Right.
its own
Right.
operation for that reason. Any additional? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second, we need an approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
I lost my trolley there, I apologize.
Mr. Chair, could we have a 10-minute recess?
No.
Okay.
You can have it after we finish with the property services portion of our meeting.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff.
I have just one request for your consideration today, the request of applicant Nicollet Garden LLC and property owner the Melva E. Griebel Living Trust. Request is for a conditional use permit to establish a large solar energy system. And I would note that the applicant, Dan Rogers, is in the audience today, this morning. The project site is located in Cortland Township and is zoned to agricultural preservation. The system would have a capacity of 1 megawatt and occupy up to 6 acres of the 14-acre property. The project utilizes existing XL infrastructure, that being a power/feeder line and a substation. Access will come off 501st Lane, and access approval has been granted by the township. Per Public Works, the project includes the removal of an existing access onto County Road 25. Parking and material storage will be prohibited within the public right-of-way, and any work within the right-of-way must be permitted by Public Works prior to the beginning of construction. The project is required to meet stormwater construction standards for permitting by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. This includes ensuring that post-development runoff is less than or equal to pre-development runoff. The applicant intends to seed the site with a pollinator-friendly native seed mix, and also to establish a row of cardinal dogwoods as screening along 501st Lane. Regarding security, the site will be remotely monitored and will be surrounded by a 7-foot agricultural-style security fence. 6 neighboring landowners testified at the hearing, including Glenn and Jane Elders, Ryan and Janelle Bodie, Scott Flowers, and Julia Ulrich. All objected to the request. They expressed concerns over potential impacts to health, drainage, property values, the number of solar projects within the county, local aesthetics, roads, toxicity, and waste. The applicant did submit a decommissioning plan and intends to submit a bond with the county as beneficiary. The proposal does appear to meet all applicable setbacks and standards of the zoning ordinance and renewable energy ordinance. After due consideration, the commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request. Mr. Chair, staff seeks a motion to approve the request and the attached findings of fact.
I'll move to approve, and I have a few questions.
Have a motion?
I will second that.
We have a second. Your question, Commissioner.
So how much of the ground is normally covered by grass and flowers? What percentage in a solar garden?
My understanding is the entire project is seeded. I believe it's usually between the rows where the grass will grow. I think they said they were going to limit it to a height of 30 inches so that it doesn't impact the...
I mean, how much of the ground is bare, basically, after it's in operation and everything?
It should be all seeded.
Should be all seeded.
Yeah.
Okay. And because it's grass, there should be probably less runoff, but more infiltration into the soil?
That's a general thought, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, someone here said that there's a lot of field runoff coming in there. Is there also tile lines daylighting into that area?
All the fields are tiled into that one, the one section. There's a 3-foot tile, and almost all those fields are tiled into that one, or a 2-footer on the...
So it comes out of the ground and it goes through that 3-foot culvert?
It
Or
doesn't come out of the ground.
Yes.
Well, it goes on top of the ground into the 3-footer, and then all the other ones are fed into it.
Okay.
There's a main line that goes from the north side of 25, that's, Reuben Bodie owns the one, the farm, that's all tiled, and there's a main line that actually goes through that 14 acres. That feeds into that 3-foot standpipe that goes under.
Okay, thank you.
That's another concern too, is that tile line could be smashed in that field.
And that is a question that has that been a problem? Because that's not the only spot, that's not the only solar garden where there's tile mains going underneath.
I'm not aware of any issues with tiles damaged by construction.
I would imagine the agreement between the developer and the landowner that the tile has to remain in its functioning condition.
And if they hurt it, they have to repair it.
Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yeah.
But is that documented anywhere? So that
That would be in the contract between the landowner and the developer.
Okay.
I believe the one by Eagle Lake, actually, they had to move back 460 feet to get away from the tile line.
Do you have a question?
I'm wondering whether Mr. Rogers wishes to speak. He's been holding his hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, we actually are surveying that.
Come straight.
Why don't you come up and we have fixed questions. You are probably the best man to answer this.
Well, thank you for the time. Dan Rogers, 2728 Stevens Avenue, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we do have a contractual obligation.
Can you just tell us who you are?
Oh, sure, yeah, sorry. I'm Dan Rogers. I'm representing the applicants, the developer of this project. We're a local energy developer in Minnesota. We do all our work in Minnesota, specifically in community solar gardens, and all the benefits stay within Minnesota. But just to address the particulars that were just discussed a second ago, it is a contractual obligation that we repair any tile that were damaged. In this instance, we're actually avoiding the main tile and having it surveyed by a professional survey company to stake it out and to make sure we're to the west of it. Essentially, we don't want to enclose a fence or put any structure over a main tile that you might have to dig out later. So it's not in our interest to do that.
Because the access would not be good if it's full of panels.
Our lenders would not appreciate having to dig up the system to work on a tile, yes.
I see a question bubble.
Well, yes, I didn't know. If we're finished on that topic?
I believe so, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Please.
Mr. Rogers, can you tell us, some concerns been raised about the $25,000 decommissioning bond?
Sure.
First, I don't know if that number is accurate, and second, how would that cover decommissioning in 25 years?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So essentially that number comes from us getting a quote from our builders about what they would expect it to be in the future years pricing. Obviously, a lot can happen in 25 years, so you don't really know. Part of that is balanced that there's a lot of raw material in the project itself that's assumed to be scrap value. So a lot of steel, a lot of copper that you can assume will be recycled and is worth something incremental. And that number, we did look at previous gardens approved in Nicollet, and that has been about the range. So we felt that since we had a quote that put us about there and previous projects had it, it seemed like a decent number.
Mr. Chair, for my follow-up, what if the actual decommissioning were 50,000? Who's on the hook for the other?
We're still liable. The contractual obligation is for us to remove the system at the end of 25 years. If we're not, the bond is really there in the event that something would happen where we wouldn't be able to actually, follow through on that obligation. So it's really a safety net in the event something were to happen.
Mr. Chair, on this commissioner is still, are you still going to?
No, please.
Thank you for your attendance here today. The current occupant of the White House made a statement, I don't know if, well, it isn't probably true, about windmills causing cancer. We're hearing today that solar panels are causing cancer. This is the first I've ever heard of such an idea.
Yeah, I've also not heard of that until this instance. There's solar deployed around this country since really in the 80s, but a large scale since kind of the early 2000s. And there are no hazardous materials of any significance in these panels to warrant any thought that it might create a hazard. And there are rules and state law that you're not allowed to place hazardous materials on land, and if you do, you have to clean them up in certain fashions, and those standards do not apply to solar systems.
So you're saying to us today that solar panels don't cause cancer or any other kind of illness?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Huh.
I would say no. Yeah.
Thank you.
The question, Commissioner Coolidge, if I understand correctly, could be the taking part of the panels at the end of the process, which I think you've talked about the removal of the panels.
Yep.
at the end.
So not just sitting there, Commissioner, they're not gonna cause cancer, but it's the dismantling of them, that's the idea that's being proffered?
Like a tornado.
I don't know.
Well, that would mean
The
if,
coatings on them, the coatings are full of Gen X and PFAS chemicals. DuPont has provided proof that they manufacture these film for solar panels. So I think we need to address that these particular solar panels are covered in Gen X and PFAS chemicals. Because they're the ones that pollute the ground with the issues, and it's long term. This isn't gonna happen within a year. This is something that's gonna happen in years to come, and there's gonna be lots of health effects from them. There's, the EPA is involved and currently investigating that right now. There's lawsuits being done down in the southern states.
This all runs down to the Minnesota River.
so am I to understand that when it rains or hails or snows or somehow takes what you're saying off of these panels and making them less effective to be solar panels? Is that the testimony we're hearing? Can you tell me, as the expert for this company, if that's true?
To the best of my knowledge, that is not the case.
Since it is a health issue, I would request that we have proof, because we just can't go off to the best of our knowledge. I mean, I've got documentation here that says that DuPont has provided proof. There's a statement here. There's a scientist listed here. This is research that's all being done. As I stated, the EPA is involved in this research. As a county, I don't think that we can just turn our head and believe what a solar developer is gonna say. They have not come into this situation and expressed any concerns of why we should not be moving forward with the solar farm. Everything is a positive. This is for the good. Well, where are the negatives for it? They don't speak about the negatives.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Commissioner Kohler.
so I think this is the first time in recent history, since we've had solar requests, that we've had neighbors saying, not in my backyard, or there's cancer-causing agents, or any other kind of opposition. I'm wondering why, John or Mandy, to your recollection, has there been any neighbors saying, why are you building such a solar garden here? Mandy, if you want to come forward, or John, does anyone remember anybody saying this isn't good for us, or have they all pretty much passed the test?
Mr. Chair, in regard to Commissioner Kolar's questions, we have permitted several 1 megawatt projects and one large 5 megawatt project in the last 5 years, and then there's been a handful of 39 kW sites around the county with it. As far as opposition to any solar projects, there has been one recently, and it was more in regard to the weed and maintenance of the facility. The project was up and running for approximately a year, and the adjacent neighbors did have concern about the lack of maintenance by the developer. We have since contacted the developer and made sure that they are aware that they do have to maintain their weeds because they are pollinator-friendly vegetation. They do tend to have a higher growth rate, where they're up to 2 to 3 feet with it. So there was some concern that the developer was not properly maintaining it and mowing it with it. But that has been the most amount of opposition that we have seen since we started permitting solar projects.
I appreciate that answer. The Gustavus student raised the pollinator issue. It seems to me that a solar farm is going to be helpful to the bees and the birds.
It does, considering most of the sites have been some type of row crop, with bringing in native pollinator-friendly vegetation. They do have the longer root system, which will help infiltrate with water, so it does stay on site rather than a row crop, which tends to run off.
And then if I could, Mr. Chair, the Ringsdorf farm, the large 76-acre that I remember the last time, Ringsdorf, Utern, Heyman, Any complaints from neighbors around that particular one that you recall to the extent that we seem to be seeing today?
That was of concern when we first permitted, how the individuals in close proximity were going to react to it. The developer assured that they already had conversations with the individuals, and since then, our office has not been contacted with any concerns.
I appreciate the answer, thank you.
I have one more thing to say about that. We have been in contact with a lot of Nicollet County residents, and in talking with them to get their thoughts on the solar farms, they told us, good luck. You're gonna go to the meeting, everything's approved, there's nothing you can say or do is gonna stop that. So that's why there's no opposition, because everybody told us we're coming here today and last week to waste our time.
That's what they say about you guys.
That's
Well, not
why
you guys,
nobody
last Monday.
has come. And as far as no opposition, then why did Blue Earth and the sewer have moratoriums to look into that? Google, who was Googling before? Google solar farms, there are people all over the United States protesting these things, all over. I'm in contact with one in Indiana, they spent $70,000 to date to fight it. And they have been successful thus far, so it can be done. So again, just to iterate, our county, all of our county area, and granted, remember, we're next to a church, we're next to a school. There's not just us immediate landowners, there's a lot of people involved in this area, and we have talked to them, and they have said continuously, I don't know why you're going, there's nothing you can do or say, you're gonna go to that meeting, and everybody's gonna approve it, and you have nothing to say about it. So that's the whole thought, nobody's gonna come here to waste their time, but we feel so strong about this, we're not sitting back and leaving it go.
Because last Monday, we got shut down, so we just walked out. 10-minute recess. I believe one of the gals here called a 10-minute recess. They had a recess, told us, no more questions, we're done, we're voting. Bam, they had the votes. Everything was rehearsed and wrote down. That's why nobody comes, how we're treated.
Because it's already done.
That's what Nicollet County looks like. That's what they're saying about Nicollet County people.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Please.
Could we continue with the questions to Mr. Rogers to pursue what was discussed earlier?
Please, Mr. Rogers, just come forward again. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, if I might?
Please.
So we were talking about the hazardous material concerns.
Yes.
And I've been looking, as this discussion's been going on, about the claim about 300 times more than nuclear power and the like. So I'd like to understand this a little more.
Yeah.
My understanding in looking at this, and you can correct me, is that the concern, the hazardous material concerns that tend to come up with solar panels relates to either their disposal, e-waste, or if the panel is destroyed, somehow broken. So let me ask you first about the e-waste part. At the end of 25 years, where did these panels go?
Yeah, so it's a great question. The panels actually can either be one of two things. They can go to a specific recycling facility to break them down into the raw components, recycle those components and jettison them. They can go to a landfill. They could theoretically, because the useful life is typically 35 to 50 years, they could be resold and actually replaced in another area. But to your comment about the end of life, these particular type of modules, polysilicon and monosilicon panels, are different than another type, which is called thin film, which is cadmium telluride. That does require some consideration as to a hazardous material on cleanup. That is not what is being proposed. The proposal of these modules do not contain any of those same materials and therefore don't require any type of hazardous material cleanup at the end of life.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Please.
These panels do not contain cadmium?
These do not.
And what happens if a panel is broken during use?
Panels broken during use, which is pretty rare. The hail impacts are pretty substantial, but if they do, it would pretty much shatter, like fracture the glass, and then we would send someone in to pick it up, clean up the glass, and throw it out.
Mr. Chair?
Continuation, yeah, Commissioner Lipke.
Some of these solar farms, the world or the country over, have had their 20-year life cycle or 25 years life cycle already?
We would be coming up to the first one in about 2023.
Okay, and what's the chances they're going to say, well, let's re-up them for another 10 years?
Probably pretty good.
Okay.
Just to elaborate on that, the incremental cost to repower the system is very small compared to the first cost to put it in. So you'd imagine that the electricity rates they could deliver in that 30, that 10 additional years is pretty competitive.
Another question. Excel has a mandate, correct? Recyclable.
They do.
Is it 25%?
Excel's mandate, I believe, and I could be off on this, but I believe by 2030 they were required to get to 30% renewable generation in their portfolio. This particular program assists in that, but is not a carve-out or anything as it relates to a particular technology type.
And I've also had a couple concerns, and I think maybe one of you at least gave it to me also about prime farmland getting used for this.
Mm-hmm.
But they brought up the reason they're there is because of the substation. That's why you guys are in the center of the bullseye.
Mr. Chair?
Please.
There was some mention of coating of these panels and
Mhm.
DuPont product maybe. Can you
So DuPont, there's no DuPont products on the modules being proposed. There are anti-reflective coatings placed on these modules to, one, prevent glare, and two, absorb more light. My understanding is those are non-toxic coatings that are pretty standard.
Is it safe to compare that coating to like what goes on your glasses?
I believe so, yes.
Had that discussion with my family in the last week about coatings on glasses.
Well, there was just
Anti-glare.
and a discussion of UV
Yeah.
off
Right.
because of them.
Mr. Chair, another question.
Commissioner Lipka.
Are you aware of any nuisance lawsuits by homeowners based on losing value of their homes or like the water concerns that have gone against solar developments?
So it's a great question. I am not, but to speak to property value, and we mentioned this at the Planning Commission meeting as well. The best source of info we have on this, other than we speak to county assessors and we ask if they've seen any impact. But there was a 2017 study that came out by Cohn Resnick, a large international multinational accounting and consulting firm. And they looked at a project in Chisago County, which was a 100 megawatt project, so 100 times larger than this project. And they found that they did not see any impact to either home sale price or velocity of sale from listing to sale in the immediate vicinity of that 100 megawatt facility. So to the best of our knowledge and the data that's out there, we don't believe that there is impact to property value.
He can say that, but I actually have been calling realtors because a lot of us don't want to stay there. And realtors said that it would have to take the right person to want to buy that place because people will not want to buy it.
If you're gonna buy a place that's surrounded with solar farms, I ask you, you have $200,000 at hand. Which place are you gonna buy? Are you gonna buy this place surrounded with solar farms? Or are you gonna go buy some place that you're gonna have a beautiful view of a countryside? You're not gonna spend $200,000 to look at solar panels all day long out your front window. That is a fact. So when it comes time for resale for us neighbors, we're gonna be paying the high taxes on our properties because that's great, the county's gonna not look at the solar farms and give our properties value, but when it comes time for us to go out and get an appraisal, the appraisal value is not gonna come back to what the county value is. So future homeowners that they're even considering buying our place are not even gonna be able to get a loan that's gonna be as much as the appraisal. So we're losing out on it. We're paying high taxes and we're gonna get screwed in the end because our property's not gonna be worth anything and we can't sell it for a decent value to get out of this. Who's gonna wanna buy it?
I actually have a question about, I think it's about setbacks and property value. So if anyone else, any other commissioners have questions for Mr. Rogers?
Do you have anything? John?
I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? If he's got all these facts, why isn't he bringing the paperwork to back it up what these panels are made of?
It's all under I assume and I believe. I don't understand there's issues. Where's the proof? I mean, I can talk all day too that I assume, but this is impacting our future. We have a 4-year-old. I don't want to raise my 4-year-old with these issues.
Mr. Chair, if we could continue finding out answers to the questions. John, if I could ask, what are the setback rules for solar farms in Nicollet County?
They are the standard for any structures, so it'd be 50 feet from the public right-of-way of County Road 25 and 35 feet off the public right-of-way of 501st Lane. The side and rear yard would be 20 feet each.
So what, maybe I'm not asking, how closely can a solar array be placed to a residence in Nicollet County?
We do not have any setbacks to residences.
How close will this solar farm be to a residence?
That I don't know off the top of my head. We'd have to do the measurement.
That's my understanding of the concerns in Lesueur and Blue Earth County with the moratoriums, was concerning setback from residences and setback from property lines. Those were the focuses, so that's why I'm asking about setbacks.
Okay.
And maybe we'll get an answer in a moment, so we could move Mr. Chair to a different topic.
Is there a different topic?
So, Commissioner, what you were saying, what I think I heard you say is, instead of some health questions, it was a setback question that the moratorium on Blue Earth and the sewer were being caused by.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kolars, I'm going by the Free Press article concerning the moratoriums, and the focus of the article and the comments by Commissioner Brender were about the setback from residents and the setback from property lines. There's no mention of materials in the discussion here about setbacks.
I question that further because there was a Free Press article written about the meeting last week as well. I had a whole lot to say. There was one topic mentioned, one thing that I mentioned in that whole article, so I don't think we can, I appreciate that you looked that up, but I think that to look at that whole moratorium, I think you would need to contact each of the counties to see what was all made up of that, with all the concerns.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Lipke.
Can I ask you the same question I asked Mr. Rogers about, have you heard of any nuisance lawsuits on solar?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, thank you.
You know, Eagle Lake has a lot of issues with TV, radio reception, been a lot of problems, and I believe Jeremy Munson is trying to help them with that.
I do have a complaint from a Nicollet County resident that actually called New Ulm Telecom due to buzzing in their phone lines. The technician that did come out to look into that had inquired about what types of changes have been made in the area, and the rep indicated that the new thing that's coming in the area is the solar farms, and they believe that, and again, there's no proof, this is what's been said, New Ulm Telecom, whatever they're called now, New Vera, is researching that further. Why are phone lines starting to buzz because of all these new solar farms being put into our area? So again, what's that gonna do for our internet connections, our cell phone lines, and et cetera? Schools?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
There was discussion about the, and this may be a different person's question, so please feel free to hand it off, about the taxation of whether it's taxed as ag land or commercial land.
Yeah, that'll, one I'll have to pass off. I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Jackie, do you know?
Jackie, maybe?
That is actually the assessor's office, but I do have knowledge that I think that there's probably some talk in legislation about how to assess that, but currently it's ag. It is classified as an ag.
Legislation at the state level concerning
Correct.
how.
Yeah, correct.
Is there a
But as
total
of
on
right
tax?
now, statute, the assessor's office would have to abide by the statute as is, and the requirements as is, but that could change down the line.
Mr. Chair, the solar guy wants to.
Mr. Rogers, please.
I just wanted to state that in most jurisdictions, the section that encloses the fence is converted to a commercial use and taxed as a commercial use. I believe you're accurate in the property tax assessment is what was being conveyed there, but as to the use itself, it is typically moved to a commercial. I don't know for a fact that it would be in this case, but other jurisdictions that is quite common.
And there is a usage tax on solar, well, actually not on the 1 megawatt, I'm sorry, that would be 5 megawatt or higher, then there's
Yep.
a usage tax that goes out there.
So maybe our assessor would need to look into that, make sure that that transfers, if this is to all of them.
That's state law.
State guidelines.
Statute, though, so you don't get a lot.
Right, well, that was gonna be my next question, so. Did you have anything else there, Mr. Rogers?
No, I just
All
wanted
right,
to
I
clarify
appreciate that, thank you. Do you have something else, John?
I think I'm done.
Yeah.
Everyone's looking at me because I do have one more area.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine.
But the question was raised,
This
John,
is the
about
point.
the washout water, the road washout. Sounds like it's happening now, and that may raise a question as to why that road's washing out now, but what can we say about water and the concerns that are being raised about road washout?
Well, they do have to meet the stormwater pollution prevention plan standards by the state. They have sized the basin slightly larger than what is required for them to size. And again,
I mean to interrupt, so people are clear about when you're talking about a basin, what does that mean?
it's a shallow depression.
So the area underlying the structure will be reduced, or its depth in surface ground will go deeper than it is now.
No, it's actually, the basin is located in the southwest corner
So
of the
it's
facility.
it's a retention pond.
It's
Okay.
basically a retention
Okay,
pond, just a
that's
very
fine.
shallow
I just wanted to
one.
be clear,
Yep.
because not everybody knows what these are, including myself, so I need some clarity on
So
that.
the site drains in that direction, so that's why they located the pond basin in that specific location.
And then that basin has an outlet at some level?
I believe so.
No, it's a spillway.
Is it-
Runs over the top.
It's meant to just slow down the water flow, it's not meant to retain water, so as water exits.
So it's a delay feature?
Correct.
As far as not surging the rest of the tile system with all of that volume at any one given time? Is that a reasonable?
Absolutely, and filtration, so any sediment is hardly.
So the theory is that it also is gonna hold that, so any sediment that's coming from exposed soil runoff would settle there before it goes into the tiling system. Is that correct? Is that a fair description as you understand it?
That is, but the concern isn't rainfall, it's all the snow trap that 1 foot basin. I mean.
It's
you
an
can
open field right now with
you
nothing
can
catching
You can
it.
do whatever you want till you live there 25 years, you don't understand, it's gonna catch. I mean, we're in a clean water, Minnesota Valley Clean Water Act. Our ravines in the last 5 years are just getting ripped, you know what, I mean, it's bad. And that thing's gonna catch so much snow, it's not even funny. I mean, you don't, and it goes right, 1 foot, here, that's 1 foot. How much water is that gonna slow up in the spring? Not much.
It's gonna be right next to the tile that's already draining. So maybe right now we do have overflow, but you know what, that's gonna cause a lot more, cause once that 1 foot is full, and that's what happens.
So do I have a right to plug the tile? I mean, it's my property, I can do what I want, right?
I think so.
I mean, that's what they're doing, they're following some setbacks. I mean, I got tile coming into my property, it's gonna cost me money to fix my ravines. I think I'll go cement and shut this spring.
We spent
Is there something saying I can't?
Was there additional?
Was there I don't know if anyone found information about the setbacks.
Andy, would you come up and speak to that?
Mr. Chair, as far as the closest home to this proposed site, it's approximately 850 feet to the southwest.
Mr. Chair, could I ask the county attorney a question?
You certainly may.
Madam County Attorney, when planning department, like Nicollet County, takes application for information for projects, any project, and it meets the criteria of the land use of that department, and then when that office takes the information to a planning commission, and they find that it meets the needs or the requirements of the planning land use plan, and then it finally comes to the county board to hear the proposal, and the county board, for some reason, decides to not approve what the planners had looked at and what the planning commission had approved. What does a county board need to do to prove that those two other entities were wrong?
The board would have to make factual findings to suggest that the decisions made by the other two parts of the process were inaccurate.
And you've seen the behavior of our planning department or property services. They usually don't accept proposals that don't meet the needs, one could assume, and you've seen the behavior of our planning commissioners who look at a proposal, and if it meets the criteria of land use and gets approved, then they're moving in the direction of approving, correct? So it's rare that a county board would change that type of action.
Generally speaking, would be a unique circumstance for the county board not to continue to approve unless it's presented with new information that was not presented at prior proceedings.
Thank you for your input.
Did you have something?
No, I think I went through each of the points that were.
Commissioner Brown?
Nothing.
Commissioner Lippy?
Call the question.
Thank you. Let's do a roll call vote.
Lipke?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Marl?
Yes.
Kohler?
Yes.
Cap?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your efforts.
So then that was just approved?
Yep.
I take it.
That is correct.
You gave factual information to us as a resident. I feel that I've been violated. So,
I do too, and that's why our whole Nicollet County told us we're wasting our time coming today. There's nothing that can be said or done to do anything.
It's all about the money. It's really
The county's
sad.
getting money, the township's getting money, the property owner that's put in the solar farm gets the money. We get the health concerns and the environmental concerns. We deal with the road washouts. As far as I understand, the county's supposed to look out for the people of Nicollet County, just not the land rights. I mean, when the planning commissioner came in, all their items were about land. Where's it about the people?
Mr. Chair, we have another agenda item that we need to get to.
Debate is closed. Thank you.
That was a nice explanation.
Thank you, Michelle. And I believe we have Mandy with the annexation agreement between Belgrade and Oshawa Townships.
Yes, Mr. Chair, there was a scheduled 10 o'clock public hearing for the annexation from Belgrade Township to Oshawa Township. Just a little history on this. The last time the county entertained such an annexation was in 1993. It's not a common action by any means, but Minnesota statute section 379.02 allows the county board to entertain such boundary adjustments with it. As far as why this is happening, back in 2015, Mr. Molitor approached the Board of Adjustment and Appeals requesting a variance to reduce a shed from 20 feet down to 0 feet to construct a shed basically across his property line. If you look in your packet on page 159, there is a map indicating the annexation area, and you will see that the township boundary does go through the bottom third, southern third of the shed. With this, there is a small portion of Mary Flatten, I believe, her property. It's the little triangle piece in the center of the property, but essentially it's all Mr. Molitor's property with it. Mr. Molitor and Mary Flatten have worked with Christine Gonzalez as the attorney representing them, and Christine has done the work with Belgrade Township and Oshawa Township. Within your packet, you do have a copy of the agreement that both townships did approve, and indicating who's going to begin the maintenance operating every other year with it. As far as any questions, I'm willing to answer any of them. This is a unique situation. There is one other potential site that this may happen within the next couple of years, but the reason it took so long is that since it doesn't happen on a regular basis, not staff, but other individuals were not sure how to approach it with it. So we did provide the information that was documented in 1993, and then they moved forward on their own speed.
I move approval.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any other questions?
And we discussed this before, correct?
Yes,
It'll
yep, during a
workshop.
board workshop
We had
this
in
summer.
workshops. And since there was an official resolution, I'll call the question.
Carl?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Colors?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Jack, I couldn't restrain you longer, but I think we've reached a point where we'd like to take a small break.
Yeah, that's fine.
And we will commence, I'll give you 15 minutes. I'd like to call the Drainage Authority meeting to order. I apologize to the gallery for our delay. Our earlier portion of our meeting ran a bit long, so thank you for your perseverance and bearing with us in that. You have before you the Drainage Authority agenda. We have consent agenda items, which is the approval of the minutes and the special Drainage Authority minutes. I'd entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. As part of our regular agenda item, this is not the public hearing component, but we do have in our agenda an opportunity for public appearances that are not related to the agenda items. There is a public hearing scheduled for a bit later in our agenda, so if you have any other topics, anybody has anything else, please step forward, state your name, identify your business. I see no one lunging to the microphone, so I'm assuming we're good there. We will move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is to set the public hearing date for County Ditch 90 for acceptance of contract.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the
Morning.
board. I'd like to set the hearing date to accept the final contract, the acceptance of the final contract for County Ditch 90, and that would be for December 17th at 10 a.m. here in the boardroom.
And that would be in conjunction with our regular board meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Sorry.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We next have the public hearing portion and our final engineer's report on County Ditch 79. Ms. Copeland.
Thank you. For today's hearing on January 18th, 2017, a petition for the proposed improvement to County Ditch 79 was presented to the Nicollet County Public Service Department. The petition was reviewed by the Nicollet County Attorney, Michelle Zender Fisher, and was approved by the board on February 14th, 2017. Chuck Brando from ISG was appointed as the engineer for the project and was instructed to draft the engineer's preliminary report. The preliminary report was submitted to the Public Service Office on July 19th, 2017, and the public hearing was held on September 26, 2017. At that time, the Drainage Authority ordered ISG to prepare the final engineer's report, and also Ron Rehnquist, Charles Anderson, and Brad Wick were also appointed as the viewers. The purpose of today's public hearing is to review the final engineer's report, the viewer's report, and take testimony from all parties to determine whether to proceed with the project or dismiss the petition. Today's hearing was also mailed and posted on November 12th, 2019. It was also published in the county newspaper on November 7th, November 14th, and November 21st, 2019. Also, part of the hearing, the ISG did submit the final engineer's report to the DNR, and the DNR does have a response that by statute I will read into the minutes.
Please proceed.
The letters from the Department of Natural Resources, Department of Ecology, and Water Resources, dated October 23rd, 2019, addressed to Jackie Kopet, Nicollet County Drainage Authority, 501 South Minnesota Avenue, St. Peter, Minnesota, 56082. Subject is County Ditch number 79, improvements, final engineer's report, Nicollet County, Minnesota. Dear Ms. Kopet, the Department of Natural Resources, DNR, Division of Ecology and Water Resources has completed its review for the final engineer's report, the FER, titled County Ditch Number 79 Improvement, Nicollet County, Minnesota. This letter constitutes the Commissioner's final advisory report pursuant of Minnesota Statute 103E.301. As required under Minnesota Statute 103E.301, the DNR finds, number 1, the detailed survey report is complete and appears to conform to the general requirements of Minnesota Statute 103E. Number 2, the detailed survey report is an acceptable plan to drain the property affected. Number 3, the Commissioner does not approve or disapprove the plan. We do, however, recommend the Drainage Authority ensure the project is consistent with the Nicollet County Water Plan. Number 4, the proposed drainage project benefits the agricultural land in the watershed by improving drainage characteristics and increasing farmable acres. And number 5, the Commissioner determines that a soil survey is not required for the project. On page 11 of the FER, the engineer recommended improvement option 2, stating that it is most likely option to be approved by the DNR. We also support option number 2, as it represents the minimal impact solution to a specific need with respect to all other reasonable alternatives, pursuant to Minnesota Rules, Chapter 6115.0200, Subpart 5, Item C. Please note that a DNR Public Waters Work Permit is required for both options, as they both involve replacement of the outlet culvert to Swan Lake, but option 2 appears to be a much more viable project alternative. Thank you for your opportunity to review the FER. Please contact Gary Bennett, Area Hydrologist, at 320-234-2550, extension 230, or by email at gary.bennett@state.mn.us. If you have any general questions about this letter, best regards, Jim Seal, District Manager. Copies went to Chuck Brandel, ISG, Gary Bennett, DNR, Area Hydrologist, Stein, DNR Area Wildlife Supervisor, Scott McInthron, DNR Area Fishery Supervisor, Kevin Osterman, Nicollet County Soil and Water, and John Lukey, Nicollet County Commissioner. That is it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our engineer will present his final engineering report. Mr. Brandel.
All right, thank you. Can everybody hear me all right? All right.
Okay.
I'm Chuck Brandel with ISG. Since we last met, we've had a few meetings with landowners, a few meetings on site. We did some staking of alignments, and then the viewer's report was finished. So we submitted our final report. Just a little quick background. The watershed's just over 1,100 acres. Has about 50 feet of fall throughout the watershed, predominantly agricultural row crops. Originally constructed in 1955 with 16,000 feet of open ditch and a small section of tile. There was a DNR permit that allowed some of the downstream area to be cleaned in 1981. And then there was a redetermination of benefits in 2014. And then I believe, was it 2018, there was a cleaning of the ditch? 2017 or 2018, there was a cleaning of the ditch. So the red line represents the watershed. Blue lines represent open ditch. So the open ditch drains generally from south to north into Swan Lake and ends just before an unnamed shallow basin just south of draining into Swan Lake. When we performed the survey, the outlet of the ditch was blocked with over 2 feet of sediment. There was vegetation growing up, but the remainder of the ditch had been cleaned. So here's just a few pictures of the outlet. There are multiple culverts on the system. There is one that is currently near the lake that is not currently part of ditch 79. That is a combination of a 60 and a 72-inch culvert. Otherwise, there are metal, what we call corrugated metal culverts on most of the crossings, except for County Road 21 has a concrete culvert. As part of this project, we're recommending that one of the culverts be removed. It's not needed anymore. The culvert near the lake be replaced with a concrete culvert. It is in very poor shape. And then also potentially the 440th lane culvert be replaced, as that metal pipe is in poor shape, and replaced with the concrete pipe. So again, here's the watershed. Zooming in, we looked at two options based on what was petitioned. The first option was to go through this wetland basin, following the green line, and then go all the way to Swan Lake, replacing the culvert near the lake. Here's kind of a zoomed in look at that. Ditch kind of comes down, north is to the right. The green line follows right through the middle of the basin. Zooming in on the profile, on both the west and north side of the basin, when we performed our survey, there were sediment that was built up over 2 feet right at the start of the basin. And then also, I believe there was a beaver dam that was near the outlet of the basin, and sediment built up behind that. So option 2 was to go around the basin that the DNR is designated. They did an OHW survey and determined the elevation. So we met with the Cordes family that owns the land on the northwest side of the basin, and we staked an alignment that was presented at the preliminary hearing. Based on some of their comments, adjusted that alignment to get as close to the wetland basin as possible, trying to come perpendicular into the existing channel that's there, perpendicular out of the existing channel, to really try to minimize the impact to their property. That's the biggest change since the last meeting. We also did stake this alignment out and kind of walked it with them and showed them what was there. Along with the improvement, we put together a list of damages for each option. The permanent damages are about 0.86 acres higher for option 2, going around the basin. So we submitted those damages to the viewers so they could put a value to the land that would be taken by this realignment. We also included temporary damages for construction. You'll need to get equipment into the area. There'll be some spoil, and we even highlighted areas where spoil could go outside of the wetland area for both options. So all that being said, we did a hydraulic analysis, looked at the effects of the system, and put together a cost estimate for each option. And this has been updated yesterday after some comments received from staff on the amount of separable maintenance. So everybody should have an updated cost. I believe I passed them out to the board, and landowners should have those. So if we just repaired the short section of ditch and the culvert crossing, you'd have about $23,000 of repairs for both options. When you look at the improvement, costs are very similar. It is broken down by the ditch, the new ditch, existing work on the existing ditch, the culvert near Swan Lake, and then the removing the other culvert. So when you add in all of those costs, option 1 is about $136,000, not counting the 448th Avenue road crossing, which we're recommending could be a road authority cost. And then option 2 is $140,000. Part of the reason for why they're close in cost, the option 2 requires more excavation, but it's easier to get at. Digging in the middle of swamp is not necessarily easy to do and requires some mats, some other special equipment. So essentially when you look at the cost breakdown, they're very similar in cost. So based on the DNR's comments, we would recommend option 2. I've been told by Gary Bennett that option 1 would more than likely not be permitted. And so we're recommending option 2 because that's what we can get a permit for. We did apply for the permit to get the, at least the clock started on that, because it can be a 2 to 3 month process. So the permit has been applied for. So at this point, we would recommend that the project is cost effective, practical, and feasible. Viewers will discuss benefits, and we'd recommend approval of option 2, as that is what we can permit for the project. I will maybe wait till public comment I did receive some public comment from landowners, so I'll wait till that time to bring that up. Questions?
I just need some clarification, Chuck, if I may. The reports, plans, and specifications in Appendix B, the ones that you published here are the amended. Is that correct?
Everything on the screen is amended, and then the only change from what was submitted is this first sheet, which is a cost estimate summary.
Okay.
Which
The
I've
one
handed
that you
out.
presented
Yes.
just before the meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
And what the major change in that is for the repair costs. I removed a majority of the engineering costs, as if we just did a standard repair, we wouldn't need to go through the permitting process and all of these hearings. So I took those costs out of the repair costs.
Okay. Just a procedural question from your perspective. If we continue this process or this hearing to a later time, will it significantly or financially impact the project?
If you don't ask for any changes from our standpoint, no.
Okay.
We like I stated, we don't have a permit in hand. That permit.
Ultimately, that's the trigger,
yeah.
right? Okay.
So if we got that permit in 45 to 60 days, we'd still have to advertise for bid. That's putting us into the, yeah. It's
Okay.
This project is going to be difficult to construct in the spring.
It's going to be a heavy water load,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
theoretically it may be a midsummer project regardless.
Perfect world, we'd be bidding it right now, or constructing it right now.
Yeah, but we've kind of gone beyond that
Yep.
window, haven't we?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything else right now?
Nope.
Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, I think we'll move ahead with the report from Mr. Rehnquist. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We, the viewers, submitted a report on the improvement to ditch number 79. As it says that the redetermination was earlier completed. We did not change the market value analysis from the hearings that were done, as we felt that they were reasonable within the current market, that there has not been significant change, and to change the values would have then required us to request a redetermination, so that once the improvement was complete and the benefits of both the improvement and the existing system were added together, they were of equal value. So we felt that we could use the benefit values as redetermined. So what we looked at then was, other than the market value changes, we looked at what does this improvement of an outlet or the extension of this channel downstream do. The proposed project does a number of different things to those properties. It does not significantly improve the function of the existing ditch number 79. It does do things on the outlet reach of that. we felt that there was benefit to the ditch system as a whole by the removal of the one crossing. It's a cost savings. Currently, the condition of that culvert is questionable. And beyond that, there would also be then the future replacement of that same crossing. So we put a value to the system as a whole on the removal of that crossing and the elimination of that future cost. Working with the engineer, we also talked about what if there was a no action option. And that option then would create further restriction of the current outlet, trapping more and more sediments within the existing lower reach of that ditch system, and cause increased future maintenance costs as well. Ultimately, that could obstruct the hydraulic capacity of the road crossing if it could not flow freely downstream, and without the ability to maintain that outlet below the current constructed end of the ditch system, could cause hydraulic problems. With that further obstruction and loss of the current channel capacity, it is our understanding that there was originally a private ditch that controlled the water levels within that existing wetland, that was option one, was to restore that original channel. Without that restoration, the accelerated flows and the inflows from the ditch 79 would continue to adversely impact acres around that wetland, and therefore avoidance of that additional damage would constitute a benefit to the ditch system as a whole, having the ability to maintain an outlet all the way into Swan Lake. So that was what we termed within our report an outlet benefit. Some of that is downstream of the physically constructed. The removal of the one crossing is within the constructed ditch, and the reduction of maintenance within that constructed ditch technically is, or realistically, is not beyond the current outlet. But we called it an outlet benefit because it's on the lower reaches of the ditch system itself. We also then looked at, by extending that, it does improve the outlet to certain properties on the lower reach of that ditch system by making them more efficient and guaranteeing that outlet. So we had benefits to those properties of Mr. Gacy's on the lower reach, where we had reduced the efficiency because of that restrictive wetland. So we increased that to match the efficiency of the channel with that guaranteed outlet. And for Mr. Marty Warren, replacement of his private crossing, which may be restrictive to all of those flows, with an adequate sized culvert, is also a benefit to him, because that culvert will become part of the ditch system, and long term will get cost share to help maintain or replace that when that concrete, in 100 years, when that concrete culvert fails. Also maintaining the outlet end of that culvert. So with that, we could not specify a specific dollar number as to what the reduced maintenance would be, what the increased damages downstream that would be avoided would be. We've developed what we felt was a range of values. With looking at that, plus the reduction of the cost of long-term replacement of that crossing that's being removed, the middle of our range was the $100,000. It is not a guaranteed specific number, because I don't know that looking forward we could put an exact number of acres impacted. We looked at something between 5 to 15 acres that would be impacted at different levels by future sediment delivery and loss of the outlet downstream. So we looked at that. The direct benefits of the physical construction of the channel then would have been $38,416. The $100,000 we felt was a value to the system as a whole, not to specific properties on the current system, gave us a net benefit of $138,416.50. Damages were allowed for the areas of construction and areas of impact, as there is no tillable acres being taken out of production. As a part of the physical construction, those damages are mostly temporary or low in value, because they're grasslands that would just be part of the channel rather than current fringe areas of the wetland. So that is what we did with the benefits.
Do you have any questions? In looking at the report for myself, there was a land value derived for the Cordis property.
It was a damage value for the impact of those acres of channel.
But there was, I mean, arguably, that's now gonna become a ditch, right?
That will
So
be.
that was where the value was.
The
placed.
value was the loss of those acres of
Which was, I
grassland that
believe,
will be a
2
ditch channel.
2.8 some acres, if I recall, or?
2.76
I'm sorry,
acres total with the
2.76.
temporary.
How did you get to that number?
That was the value adjusted for it being a public ditch rather having that restriction. So it was a number of dollars per acre. They still will own the property. They'll still have all access rights or hunting rights or control rights on that property. But it will be restricted from harvesting the grass or hay off of that channel area in the future.
Okay. Is there something in the report, one of the staff made reference to, there's a dating issue, one of the reports. I didn't see it myself, but
Yes,
it's in my notes.
the copy that I was given that's entitled Determination of Benefits that lists 5 properties is dated September 12, 2014.
And the cover letter was September 13th. And then it was corrected. The names and addresses were corrected after that, before it was presented to the board.
So what date should be on the report, though, I think is the question. Because right now it's 2014.
Yeah, not quite 2014. It should be within that September to October date in 2019, and I will correct that in the final version that would go with any order.
Mr. Chair. Please excuse me if I'm asking a basic question here. I know I'm asking a basic question. But could you just describe again how the system benefits outweigh the costs on this project?
Well, what we looked at as to the benefit to the ditch 79 as a whole said that we would consider impacts of this proposed project on long-term maintenance and function of that ditch system and what that ditch system may cause in longer-term damages if there is not a maintainable outlet below that. So we looked at, yes, we had approximately a $50,000 culvert crossing that will not have to be installed. That's a benefit to the system as a whole. You can take another $10,000 of that as the seed value, present value of the 50-year replacement of that crossing again. So that's present value of that future cost. The same thing when we looked at the engineer, we talked about how much reduced maintenance within that lower reach would be there because the water could flow all the way to the lake rather than being obstructed as that wetland becomes more congestive. And we looked at $10,000 to $20,000 for that value. We also then looked at, as that becomes congested, how much additional damage from the flows coming out of the ditch is going to cause to the surrounding areas. $30,000 to $40,000 over that 5 to 15 acres over time. And like I said, we talked about a range of numbers, something between a minimum of 70 and a maximum of 130, and then we worked it down. And the 100,000 is a very even number. We were hoping we could come back with something better than that, but that fell right in the middle of our discussion range. And to lower it or raise it just to make it a smaller or bigger number to make it not look like 100,000, we said no, we're going to leave the middle of our range right at that $100,000 number.
Thank you.
I see a question for a minute, John.
Well, there aren't gonna be a lot of sharp curves in this proposed ditch, is that correct?
No, the alignment should flow relatively well to carry the sediments all the way into the lake. The
That causes
vegeta-
problems, you
Yep.
know that as well as anybody.
Yep, right now, the biggest obstruction is the vegetation within the wetland area, and that will only continue to get worse without a maintainable channel downstream.
Any specific questions for Mr. Rehnquist? Bear with us a minute.
Yep.
We're still
Oh.
looking.
I'm at your
We're
disposal.
still poking and prodding here.
Yeah, there it is, Donald E.
Yeah, there it is, I see it.
Oh, Donald was her dad's name.
Yeah.
Cordis is right there.
Got it, great, thank you.
Reed, do you have anything?
No.
Jack?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a bit stymied because I'm not sure I'm comfortable with how we got here. It wasn't real clear to me. And I can't articulate fully what I'm trying to get to, other than since there is no delay in doing a final action, I'm inclined to get this clarified for myself. And I would ask the board to consider not moving this action, but since we've called the public hearing, conduct the public hearing, and give everybody that is here to speak to the issue the opportunity to do that. But, and this is, I will take this upon myself, it's the issue of I'm not sure how we got here on a couple of these things, and I'd like a little more clarity because I did receive this information a very, very short time ago. So, is that acceptable to my fellow board, or would you like to proceed? And if you are willing to delay the vote, I would ask for a motion to do so.
As you were speaking, Mr. Chair, I thought you were asking a question of the county attorney to maybe.
No, I wasn't asking a question of the county attorney because I think part of this is really kind of discretionary to the chair, not being a parliamentarian perfectly. I asked that of my fellow board members.
Mr. Chair, I think you're asking to consider a continuation of the hearing?
That is correct, because that way we may take all the testimony we need to do today, because these individuals are busy and here to be here. That would be my goal, to do that, but merely not make a final decision until everybody's had another opportunity to review the numbers and make sure we're comfortable with the decision making.
Mr. Chair?
Madam County Attorney is ready to tell me something now.
Mr. Chair, if you have uncertainty about the numbers and how we arrived there, the board can ask the viewers to place their calculations or how they arrived at that in a more written format so that the board can consider that. And then by continuing this hearing, that would allow for that submission to occur and for everyone to have an opportunity to evaluate that, both the engineer as well as the board.
Mr. Chair, I'd like a little more input from our attorney and the landowner's attorney and the engineer, very briefly, about a good reason to wait.
Okay.
Well, excuse me.
Ma'am.
Frankly, we got this information less than 45 minutes ago.
I know.
Right, and that's my concern about this. That's where I'm running with that.
Okay.
And so, and that's why I asked the question of Mr. Brandel, if we were delaying this would significantly impact the outcome of the project, it appears that that's not. Mr. Rehnquist, would that greatly be a burden to your office to help us understand the calculations a little better by giving us a written report in that regard?
No, it would not, Mr. Chairman. We can itemize those items that we considered in the ranges
And that's what I'm just trying to have a more specific target.
Yep.
And that's what we're, Chuck, you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, at this point, like I said, if we're not approved today, we don't have a DNR permit, and we won't get one until probably January at this
Okay.
point.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I'm,
please.
Mr. Rent, you look like you want to say something, and I would hate to take action before we at least let you speak.
Please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Please.
I'm Steve Fronta, and I'm the attorney representing the landowners on the petition to do an improvement for this project by extending the ditch. And I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the floor, but what you mean by how we got here. I'm not sure where here is.
Okay, the here is, we just received the data with the information about the valuations, and we just got that data. And so, and as Mr. Rehnquist referred to it, at least from my perspective, I don't know how we got to that number, and it was not as highly clear to me. He articulated it well, but I'm a slow learner and I need something tangible. And since I have this 45 minutes ago, I'm not at the capacity to absorb all of that now. That's why I'm asking if that would be acceptable to get that information. But since we have scheduled a public hearing, I want to give everyone that's here an opportunity to give their testimony with regard to the public hearing. My goal would then be to continue the public hearing until our next agreed upon meeting.
Sure.
And then finish out the business of this particular item.
Sure, okay. So what I would like to impress upon the ditch authority here is that.
I'm sorry, wait a minute, one second.
Is the board going to consider this as part of public comment, because the board hasn't opened the public comment hearing? I want to be respectful of the question that was asked, but we haven't technically opened the public hearing at this point.
Okay, parliamentarians.
I think we could open the hearing, don't you, Michelle, and just make this part of the hearing?
But if there's a motion going to be made to continue it to the future, you couldn't do that as part of the public hearing, and you'd have to decide.
But then I have to close the public hearing
and you
to
don't
do
want-
the next action, which would then supersede our ability to have another public hearing or continue the public hearing. So it's really a process of semantics here, and I apologize for that. But we just want to make sure that our mission is met. So as I distill that correctly, the question is there a motion available that would continue the public hearing to our next meeting, or whatever we decide is going to be that motion, and then make that decision so that everyone knows that there will be a continuation, so there will not be a determination today, but we will then have the opportunity to take information at the public hearing. Does that? Because if I close the public hearing, we then put ourselves in a situation where we have to act. And then we would have to reschedule a public hearing, which would change our timeline.
You would have to renotice and
Renotice the public hearing, yes. And so that would change our timeline. So what I'm trying to do is not make this even more extended than it is. I'm merely trying to give ourselves the opportunity to take the testimony, but still give us time to recoup the written information that we would like to have, I would like to have, and then still move forward.
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Please.
If I may ask County Attorney a question.
Please.
Could we talk at this moment just about advantages, disadvantages of continuing the hearings to December?
Correct.
And then we can figure out.
And that was my concern, is that I think there was conversation to whether pros and cons versus continuing the hearing.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Fred, if I might, I'm interested in learning if you're raising red flag or concerns about continuing the hearing, not about the substance of the petition itself.
I believe they're a little bit interrelated from my perspective. interrelated insofar as whether the determination of benefits is able to be couched under the statute under which the petition was brought, that i.e. an improvement to the ditch system, an extension of the ditch, or whether the benefits are going to be couched in a way that specifically causes concern about whether those benefits are not to the improvement project, but to an outlet improvement. So this is, talk about semantics, I mean, this is statutory semantics as to how you can determine or assess benefits.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Friend, if I might, I'm going to turn to the county attorney and say, this could be a conversation that could be had between now and assuming we continue the hearing. I'm asking a process question.
Correct, and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Kemp, but I think the question articulated by Attorney Franta is the precise question that is being raised. And so, yes, the continuation would allow for that conversation to occur before the next hearing.
Before the next date.
Date, correct.
I see a rebuttal percolating in your head.
All right, so the question, the question is whether, so the new numbers that you received or the new explanation or that you received in the last 45 minutes relates to whether, my exact question as to whether they should be couched as an improvement project benefit or an improvement to an outlet project benefit. Is that?
Chair, if I might ask? Oh, sorry, Mr. Franta, I've cut you off, I apologize.
No, that's my question.
It would be my intent to move to continue this hearing so that the question that Mr. Franta raised could be addressed and then brought back to this board when the hearing continues next month. We can't answer that question.
And that's, I think, for me, part of the confusion.
Sure, okay.
Does that allay your fears?
No, but I understand.
Okay. Well, you understand the position that we're in, and
yep.
that we're trying to be fair and equitable to all parties here. And that was my goal. Madam County Attorney, does that meet your understanding and our intent as I have articulated to you and others?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And this would be a fair and reasonable mechanism to go forward with?
I think
It strikes me as it's probably the only mechanism to go forward with, but
I think there's questions that you have that we don't have answers for today, and for the board to make a full and fair, informed decision, continuing it to gather that information is appropriate.
that being said, and all my fellow commissioners being heard, I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
Do we have a date?
And
So it would be the 17th of December. We scheduled a hearing earlier, right, Jackie, what time was that?
10.
So we would want to schedule that. Was that a ditch hearing?
It is a ditch hearing.
How long will that go, do you think?
I think we could do it at 10:30.
Okay.
Chuck, do you foresee any reason that hearing would go any further?
No, it's a final acceptance hearing, and the main landowner we've recently met with, so I don't.
I think we're in a good spot for that, so I would say 10:30.
10:30 on the 17th for the continuation. Again, I would entertain a motion then. I'm sorry.
We haven't opened the public hearing, so how can we continue it?
The
We're going to
motion should
specify.
reflect that you're still going to allow the public hearing to go forward and then continue that to the 17th.
Is that your understanding correct then?
No,
Or-
we're better, yeah.
Okay, all right. So now, can we phrase that in a form of a motion?
I'm just looking, Mr. Brandt, to that date and time.
That should be fine.
Okay.
Well, I'll already be here.
Yes, okay. And Mr. Rehnquist, that'll be available for you in adequate time to drive. I think you have a pretty good sense of where we're trying to, all the questions we're trying to get answered here. So
Mr. Chairman. I would expect that I will provide a updated copy of the report with Mr. Bramble's amended numbers.
Right.
As well as a breakdown of the $100,000 benefit to the system as a whole.
And the other part of making sure we got the right date on the form, right?
The letter was
I
dated,
know,
the cover
I'm-
letter was dated 19, not 14, but as I get older, I need better glasses.
I understand. Bigger font, yeah, right? Then we run out of paper.
Mr. Chair, I'm gonna make that motion. Do I need to restate it?
Yeah, I need a motion. Someone needs to decide. I need someone.
Madam County Attorney, would you give us some language that would be consistent with what you've heard our discussion be?
Mr. Chair, my understanding is the board desires to continue the hearing to allow for the gathering of additional information from your viewers, but given that the public hearing was in fact notice, allowing individuals to present their testimony today as part of the public hearing, and then continuing that public hearing to December 17th at 10:30.
What she said,
Okay.
yes. We got it. We have a motion.
I will make the second, but I would like to apologize to people who basically came down here for no reason.
No, they still have the opportunity to make their public.
I know
hearing.
that, but,
I
I
understand.
mean, they have an attorney hired, he'll probably make another trip down here. Steve does not work for a nickel an hour. And,
I still hear a second.
yeah.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. So, we've addressed that issue. Now we're comfortable with opening the public hearing to meet all the criteria. So, that being said, since you're already seated, did you have some opening comments for the public hearing?
Sure. We're going on about someplace around our fourth year on this petition, or on this action, to attempt to get some benefits to the landowners whose property is being drained. And, you know, it seems like I'll recite the history just a little bit here, but it seems like we've been through this a number of times, and I don't want to bore everyone, but, you know, the first thing is, well, the ditch ends in the swamp there. Oh, well then how come we cleaned it twice since 1955 when it was first dug? We cleaned it twice as part of the cleaning of the ditch system. Because why? Because the ditch needed cleaning, because the ditch, in order to work the way it was intended, the way the farmers were assessed, paying for the ditch, we just want it to work the way it's supposed to work, the way it was intended to work, what we paid for already. Well, turns out part of that from the slough over to Swan Lake is a private ditch. Well, no, now we can't clean it, which, you know, the new view on public waters and such, fine. So we as petitioners, landowners, are saying, well, we don't want to have this same process and procedure and expense going forward another 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now when our children and grandchildren are here, and then we have to pay this and pay that, and when we just want to clean the ditch. So we started this in when the action for cleaning the ditch started, that landed up completing, I think, in 2018, was it? The last time it was clean. All right. So the petitioners said, let's extend the ditch so that it's part of the ditch system. All right? We're going to extend the ditch. So the extension of the ditch happens to be the outlet. Happens to be, we're going to extend it from this point now by the advice and recommendation from the DNR that says it's a better option, and from the engineer that it's a better option that everyone can live with, can be happy with. And so we're going to extend it instead of what the petition asked for, instead of through the swamp to the culvert there, going under the road between the two property owners there. So, okay, fine, we've got this going around, we got it going around the swamp now, so we're still extending the ditch. Oh, it happens to be the outlet. So then, petitioners, your petition, you may not be able to assess benefits to the people that are getting benefits because you didn't call it a petition for an outlet. Well, in reviewing the statute, I think the statute is clear, and this is a legal question. I don't expect the authority, you're gonna listen to your legal counsel, but I think practically speaking, we're here to accomplish getting benefits for landowners who already have a huge stake in the whole matter. They've over the years paid for this, paid for that, had the ditch. And now they're sitting here and they're paying me and they're paying the engineer, and we keep adding up these fees and costs, and it's soon going to, add a third to a half the cost of the whole dang project. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but it seems a bit ridiculous. On the bottom line is, no matter whether we call it an improvement, an extension, the statute says an improvement can be an extension, or we call it an improvement to the outlet, you still got the same project. You still got the same benefits. You still got the same damages by running around, going around the swamp, and having the benefits inure to the benefit of the landowners. And so I would just suggest that certainly, if the legal determination is made and recommended that we can't assess the entire ditch, landowners for the entire ditch system, because we don't have the right petition, well then, let's short circuit and say, how can we get that accomplished, and how can we put in whatever waivers there be. I don't think that's needed. Again, it's a legal question that I think is gonna have to be resolved. But I would urge the authority, ditch authority here, to specifically understand that the statute for the improvement allows for the assessment of all properties that are benefited by the improvement. So all properties that are benefited by the improvement, viewer said, if I understood correctly, benefits the entire ditch system to the extent of, in his current report, $100,000. And therefore, that should be able to be assessed to those landowners. And in fact, the petition asks you to assess that to those landowners. The petitioners want that. They want to pay their fair share because they know they're getting benefit, believe they're getting benefit. And so I would urge the ditch authority here to help us move this expediently from this point forward without having to circle back around and jump through some additional hoops that I think we can accomplish without that. So I appreciate your time. If there's any questions.
Just the statutory reference, please, the site.
It's Minnesota Statute 103, capital letter E, .215, subdivision 6. Small letter B, small letter 2, or number 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time and your patience with us. Or with me, I'll own all of this if you need to. Gentlemen, your peers and your petitioners are here. Would any of you like to add additional testimony at this time? If you do, please, sirs, come forward, state your name and your address for the record, and please speak to your topic.
My name is Paul Giesecke. I'm the landowner down right on Swan Lake.
Yep.
If you ask how we got here. If you'll go back and look at the original drafting of this ditch, the outlet is to be in Swan Lake. We have a letter from the Attorney General stating that this wetland is not part of Swan Lake. Somewhere you come up with an aerial photo and ending the ditch in this wetland. Nobody will tell me when this photo was taken. But if you will look, originally it exits into Swan Lake, and that's what we're trying to do. Put it back the way it was, and it's costing us a fortune. We've been fighting for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Giesecke. I think you clearly reiterated what your counsel is advising us, so let's make it right is the goal here. Gentlemen, anything else? Any of the rest of you would like to address at this time?
I have
Chuck?
Just quickly, I did receive a call from Mr. Ron Cordes.
Mm-hmm.
He said he couldn't be here, and he said he's not in favor of the alignment. He told me his family was leaving the state for a hunting trip, but he couldn't be here. So I just told him that I would reiterate what he told me. It's a little bit of out of the norm for the engineer to.
I understand that, but the continuation allows him.
You will allow him to come and speak. So I just wanted to let you know that I got that call and I told him I'd mention it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Gentlemen, yes, sir.
Gerald Fitzner, 45998 531st Avenue, Cortland. I'd just kind of like to reiterate what Mr. Frana stated. We have better than 90% of the people on the ditch that are in favor of this project. And I don't think that number has been brought out yet this morning, but we've had signatures from better than 90%, and I think it behooves you as a ditch authority to take note of that as well. And I would encourage you to hurry this process along. As you well know, crop prices aren't nothing right now, and for us to keep losing this wetland just doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So, my name's Ted Marty. I own the little shack there. And
address?
Oh, what's that?
Your address.
Oh, 48601 241st Lane, New Ulm. So I don't have access other than by foot across that. And I could drive across that culvert at my own risk. I'm falling through. I know I have some trees, dead trees there that are possibly in a good windstorm going to fall on my cabin. And so I'm along with Paul, I mean, nothing seems to get done. And, I guess that's really what I want to say is I need to do something. If you're not going to do it, then I got to do it myself. And, I'll fill in the ditch then, so I can get across it. But, I mean, something has to happen here. So, like Paul said, it's been forever, so.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
If I could just add, the crossing that we're proposing would be a drivable crossing, and any future maintenance of that crossing would be by the ditch system. So it'd be
that
able
would meet Mr. Marty's concerns also as part of that. Is that correct, Mr. Marty?
Yeah, I'm not sure how the benefits get divvied up here, so but that's I guess the question.
Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. So.
I assumed that, but I thank you for that clarification. Anybody else at this time? I would reinforce with you, since there was a continuation of this meeting, if things change or you have additional comments you would like to make, your opportunity would again be available to you on December 17th. We will commence at 10:30 for that continuation of this meeting. I see nothing else at the moment. Seeing nothing else, I would recess the public hearing for continuation on December 17th at 10:30 p.m. AM, sorry. Some of us get up earlier than others, I apologize. AM, so thank you all very much for your patience with the board, specifically with me. I'm very much appreciative of that. It is our intent to make as good a decision as we possibly can. So I'm sorry for the delays in this, but we want to get it right, and that's our goal. So thank you all very much, and have a good holiday, and we'll see you just before Christmas. So, thank you. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the Drainage Authority meeting.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried, and we are adjourned. I will then now reconvene. Are we ready, or do you want to take a break?
Let's
Give
take
a minute?
5 minutes.
All right, we'll take 5 minutes before we reconvene. Okay, we're back in order. And I think our next item is some reports. This also, I would remind you, had an amendment to your, in your blue packet, for a third item on the amendment for the agreement on CD, or County Road 14, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board and staff. 3 items from Public Works this morning. The first to consider award a bid for project SAP 52621027. This project would involve the replacement of 2 old box culverts on County Road 21 with a concrete bridge near the entrance of Fort Ridgely State Park. We received and opened on November 19th 4 bids for this project, and those results of those bids are contained in your agenda item, and then also the tabulation of all the individual items for those bids is also included in your packet. Pram Construction was the low bidder at $1,117,557. Low bid was actually over the engineer's estimate, but looking at the second low bid, Structural Specialties, there was only a difference between those 2 bids of $3,345. And what I'm getting at here is I'm very comfortable with the bids that we received. And looking at the individual items, the one item that was off the most from the engineer's estimate was what we and the bridge engineering firm that we utilized was the estimation on the mobilization. So I'm assuming that contractor is believing that there's probably larger equipment than we even anticipated that needed to be moved in on this project. So I'm asking the board today to award the contract for project SAP 052621-027 to Pram Construction for the low bid amount of $1,117,557.
I'll move that, then I have a question.
I have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Commissioner Lipke, your question.
If we would reject this and rebid it, there's probably no chance we'd save a nickel, is there?
Yeah, I wouldn't be recommending that. We advertised and opened bids at a prime time, and this is what the numbers come in.
Well, what was our first number? Wasn't it like 630,000 a year ago or a year and a half ago? Whenever we started talking.
Boy, that might have been some real rough ballpark numbers just on a structure, but then we also have probably.
Well, I remember
about
the first
$300,000 of just approach grading work that is separate from the actual structure. And the numbers that we were talking was the bridge structure replacing with box culverts.
Yes,
and
that was only a $20,000 or $30,000 difference, correct?
Yeah, it was very, very close. And the bridge in this instance is the appropriate choice.
We're good.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
Seth, thank you for being here in this report. I'm not familiar with this company. Could you tell us a little, where are they from?
Pram Construction is out of Slayton, Minnesota. I've worked with the Prams before, and Roger Pram used to be kind of the head bridge foreman for Dunnick Brothers Construction, and then he had a son, Matt Pram, and they worked together for Dunnick's for many years. Roger eventually retired, and then Matt started his own bridge building company. And the Prams have done very good work in past endeavors that I've been involved with.
Thank you.
Anything else? Call the roll.
Yes.
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 Next item is the considered final payment for SAP 052610-015. This was a full reconstruction on County Road 10 from County Road 1 to the North County line. That project has been done for almost a year, but once the actual construction completes, then there is tons of paperwork, final paperwork that you have to complete. MnDOT State Aid has to review the project to make sure it was constructed to the state aid standards that we're supposed to build them to. The contractor had a bit of repair work that they needed to complete this spring and summer on the project, and then by the time they processed their final paperwork and presented that to us, it got us to this time of the year. And so the final payment amount to CS McCrossin Construction would be $85,913.44. With that payment, the total contract value then would be $1,728,603.34. So I'm asking the board to approve that final payment to CS McCrossin.
Entertain a motion. We have a motion from Kolar.
Second.
Second from Lipke. Any questions?
Everything is good?
Yep.
Pretty smooth, I was on her a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, there was some intake sticking out of the ground, a couple feet or whatever, that all got corrected?
Yeah, typically when we do a full reconstruction project, the tile intakes that are in the road ditch, we leave them high and saw slots in the side for erosion control measures to reduce just pure sediment from going down into the tile until the vegetation establishes really well. Once that happens, then we cut them off flush with the ground.
Thank you.
Anything else? Call the question.
Kohlers?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Morrow?
Yes.
Journal? Yes.
Yes. And I believe you have a third item.
Yes, and this is the blue agenda item that was added after the agenda was initially sent out. It's to consider amendment number 1 to MnDOT Agreement 1034758. The original agreement was for preliminary engineering cost reimbursement for the CASA 14 slide project. When that initial agreement was first approved, it was had a dollar amount or contract value of $160,000 included in that agreement. That was a estimated number at the time what the potential preliminary engineering costs would be. Since we have executed a phase 1 engineering agreement with Gale Tech and SRF, those costs are known. We're entered into a second contract. Now we have a better feel for what the actual preliminary engineering costs are, and the original agreement, the way it states, if you are going to exceed what the value of the original agreement is before you expend those funds, you need to request and execute an amendment to that agreement. And so that's what I'm here today, asking the board to approve Amendment 1, which increases the dollar value of the overall agreement. And so I'm asking you to approve that amendment and the attached resolution authorizing the board chair and the county administrator to sign the agreement.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, call the question.
Morrow?
Yes.
Lipke?
Yes.
Journal? Yes. Kohlers?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions
in
for
the
me?
interest of time, I I think we'll continue on with our business.
Oh, you saying I'm long-winded or something?
No, actually not you, it's us.
It wasn't
Hey
you.
Seth, but thank everyone in advance for tonight and tomorrow.
Oh yeah, who
Yes.
knows how it'll turn out? It could be
Yes.
exciting, and it sounds like we might have a
appreciate
small
the work.
break,
We
and
appreciate
then it may get more exciting
Everyone's
on
effort in your
Tuesday,
office to
Thursday, right?
keep everyone safe, so we
Maybe
do
you'll get to
appreciate it.
drive.
John
will be manning the ice skating rink on Easter Slough.
They had to run the loader a few years ago and they won't let him back in it.
There's merit.
That's why they bought a blower.
That's why we bought a blower, okay. I think
That's not
we
here yet, is
have
it?
an item from Jamie.
Correct. Jamie, Heather, and Dale actually.
Oh, okay.
Jamie
Do you wanna all gather around saying kumbaya, or would you like to just
No,
be
let's
available
go
for questions?
All three can come up. You'll
Come on.
have comments.
We want you to be seen on camera.
Dale, you're looking healthier than you have been at times.
Thank you. I feel much
Well,
better.
geez, that's a real vote of confidence.
It's good to be seen. How's that?
Absolutely. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr.
Good morning.
Chair, members of the board and staff. I am here to present a recommendation on a new human resources management system, which also includes our payroll, timesheeting, and our employee self-service. Back in January, we started this process. We put together a committee of our finance, IT, HR, administration, and public works to examine a replacement software system. We started by looking at 8 different software providers and then whittled that down to 4 based on the requirements that we had in place. With the 4 that we did come up with as to look at more closely, we did a discovery meeting with each of them. We also had an on-site demo with each of them except Kronos. Kronos chose to do it over the phone. But the other 4 we did have 2 meetings with. Those 4 were ADP, Kronos, Tyler Technologies, and UltiPro, or Ultimate Software, they also go by. So after going through the discovery meetings and the on-site demos, we then were able to narrow it down to 2 finalists, which were ADP and UltiPro. After that, we did additional on-site demos and then also pulled in our sheriff's department because they have some more complicated timesheeting requirements. And we've struggled the most with them, so we thought it would be good to pull them in and have them take a look at both of our options as well. We then did reference checks on both of the finalists, and then did a on-site visit with one of their customers for each. So with ADP, the group went and visited Goodhue County, who has been with ADP for a couple of years. And then for UltiPro, we visited the city of Eden Prairie. And they've also been with Ultimate Software for a few years as well. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend either of those, so if you have questions about those, I know Heather can answer. But they were very enlightening as far as being able to actually see the product in working condition with a client and not having the sales or other staff there. So they were able to ask a lot of really detailed questions and see it working. Heather did also do some additional checking on her own, reaching out to her resources. So after going through that extensive vetting process, which took us a number of months, we did, based on the ease of the payroll processing, customer service guarantees that Ultimate Software has, and the user interface that our staff will see, we did decide to recommend Ultimate Software, UltiPro, as our new software provider. Just a few things that were also important. They have over 400 delivered reports. That's something we're lacking right now, is we don't have a very robust reporting system, and it creates a lot of inefficiencies, specifically in payroll. They can also customize the reports. We can do that in real time. So we're not just stuck with the 400. We have the ability to have thousands. They will be providing a number of services that we don't currently have with Highline. They do payroll processing. Heather can talk more about that if you have questions, which basically we run the payroll, but once we get to the point where we're going to send it to the bank, they take over. Ultimate Software takes over and they do everything else, including all the tax filings and other pieces that go with that. They also provide ACA reporting. That's part of the Affordable Care Act, which is an extremely time-consuming process for Whitney right now. It takes her a number of weeks to get through that. So they take that over for us as well. They provide carrier connections, which means that we will have a direct feed from our software system directly to Health Partners and Delta Dental. Currently, Whitney is having to enter in 2 places. So she enters in our system and then she has to go to Health Partners and enter information. So that'll be another service that will provide efficiencies. There are also 3 modules that we'll have that Highline currently does not. That is, there's no performance, no onboarding, and no analytics. So there's 3 very important pieces that we'll be able to add as well by moving to Ultimate Software. As part of the other piece that's really important is they do provide us a dedicated account manager, and then we have a subject matter expert team. So we don't just have one person. We do have a core person, but there's people underneath them that are experts in each specific module. So we're able to get much more expert help. They actually build the system for us, and then we do all the testing to ensure it's been built to our needs. And then if there are issues, they fix the issues. We just work with them on the troubleshooting, but they will actually be responsible for fixing issues. It's about a 6-month implementation, so we're hopeful that we'll be up and live at some point next year. They are based out of Miami, just as a side note. And both the sales manager that we've been working with and the consultant that will help us in our implementation were former ADP employees. So they were actually helped us quite a bit with on understanding the differences between ADP and Ultimate. And they have a 96% customer retention rate. They do have over 200 public sector government customers as well across the entire country. So, Heather or Dale, did you have anything to add? Did I miss anything?
I don't, Heather or Dale, maybe Dale, you want to talk about how it's cloud-based and the security piece of it?
So we are continuing to look at hosting some of our software platforms like this. They meet they meet my fences for security. They have data houses actually in 3 locations replicated across, so we shouldn't have any loss of data. We also have the ability to pull it back at any time that we want. We went through a rather extensive security audit with them and how they meet our requirements. So as I said, Brian will probably attest to it. I have pretty high fences, and they were able to meet my requirements. So.
And they're also auto failover, so.
They are, and they're all based within only the United States, so none of it's going across.
On an international link?
Correct.
Okay. Then the backups they're responsible for?
They are. And
but then you can pull it back if you need to?
I can pull them back either from a physical location, or they have a cloud-based pull that I can do.
So you have some options, and then you can verify.
Correct.
Between the 3 sites if you need to.
The last one came from and where it is. So, and they give us a test environment to try this with, so I feel confident we're going to be all right with that.
And do we see a significant, as far as their application, since I'm assuming it's truly a web-based front end, so we're not going to see a huge load other than if you're pulling back a big pile of data.
Correct.
It's all going to be pretty seamless to the user.
To the user, it'll be very seamless.
And it'll be fairly quiet to your network here, though.
Correct as well.
Okay. Sorry, I went into techno-weenie mode. I apologize. Oh, I'm too big. I'm a bratwurst.
Mr. Chair, Heather, do you want to touch on any of the payroll piece? Because we all want to get paid, so that's part of this.
Yeah, we'll echo everything Jamie stated with the process that we went through. Our entire team being involved, able to ask the questions with the team, and I feel very confident in the process we went through, and just really doing our due diligence. I the service model they have is what I was probably most impressed with, just due to our current vendor, the challenges we have now. So that was really, when we got to the decision part, we all of us were on the same page, so that also made me feel really good. But as far as payroll, just really, they were able to show us step by step, and we had like odd little specific questions that, you know, they would show us every step. So like I didn't feel like they couldn't answer questions for us, whether it had to do with, like we mentioned, the sheriff area where we have unique situations, in making sure they can handle our vacation and sick accrual plans, union things like that. So, and then the reporting with our standard reports, and then the ease of building own reports, and not them just telling us this, but actually being able to see it when we visited Eden Prairie was very great to see. Eden Prairie I've reached out to them since we visited with other questions, and they're just, I mean, they were so, you can tell when you're happy to be on a system, so they're just more than helpful, and I think that they'll be a good resource for us as we go through implementation as well.
Is there a Minnesota users group, or is there a regional users group for all of you that are owners?
Yes, there is a Minnesota users group, and there's a national one as well.
Good.
Yep.
Good support then, good.
And talking to our bank as well about the process that we will change to, they saw no concerns. I'm sure they have other clients that do similar.
So, Mr. Chair, what will our investment be in this agreement compared to Highline?
That is a perfect, great question, Commissioner Coors. I've got that information here. UltiPro, the cost is $5,692.50 a month. There's also a $31,000 implementation fee with that. There is no customer service cost unless we ask them to build something new, which I don't anticipate doing. Highline right now is $3,747 a month. However, in the 4 previous years we've had it, we've averaged about $3,000 a month in customer service fees. And there was also a $90,000 implementation fee. What I did is I prorated out those implementation fees over a 10-year time frame. So if you do that, under Highline, we were paying $7,497 a month when you add in customer service, maintenance, and implementation. UltiPro would be $5,950. So it is less, and it's not the cheapest one on the market, but it covers all the needs that we have, and we think it's a reliable product.
Mr. Chair, those prices locked in for a certain amount of time?
They are. I can't recall what it is, Jamie.
I think we ended up at 2
years.
2 years, I think.
Which is probably pretty
Three
common.
reviewed.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
I think it's 3 reviewed at 2.
Something like that.
Okay.
And this is straight up, it's not platform specific other than some form of browser then, I'm taking it, or is there a dedicated browser that's part of their app?
They claim to be browser
Neutral?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but Chrome seems to be the one they prefer.
And
So
that's consistent with what you have available to all our staff now?
it is.
And most people at home, so. This took care of the timing issues. I mean, you're really comfortable with making the sheriff and Public Works, which were your odd children as far as getting all of those things in. And I know because it's schedules and overtime and all of the other pieces, so you're really comfortable that the staff will be able to make the entries. And I'm assuming there's a validation component that the department heads then sign off on them electronically before you get them, so.
Correct.
Okay, so it will be reviewed and it should minimize the load in your department.
Yeah, we've been running parallel.
Oh, and that was my question, I mean,
So really excited
we'll
for
be
some
parallel
efficiencies.
books for a while, but it's not like we haven't been doing parallel books, right? Okay.
It seems like there was quite an extensive background check done by you 3 or others maybe. Did we spend that much time before we hired Highline? Any history on that?
There was an extensive background there as well. It was actually a larger team we had looking at that. from what we know from our current vendor, when we did the background checks and talked with entities in Minnesota that use them at that time, which was 2014, I believe, all of those entities were very happy with that product. For whatever reason, from when we went on board and other counties in Minnesota from 2014 and on, all of those counties have had problems with the vendor, and for whatever reason, I don't know what's happened within that organization, but things went a different direction, and this is the best move for us, is to just move on.
Mr. Chair, I have a lot of faith in these people, so I think I'll move the adoption.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any other questions? But then the yoke of responsibility has now been thrust upon you guys, so I really appreciate your work and your diligence in doing this. It's very important to how we operate and how we provide good service to not only our constituency, but also our employees. So thank you very much for all of that. There is my little speech. All right, sorry. Any other questions of the group? Hearing none, I'll, well, let's call the roll. Exactly.
Mickey?
Yes.
Marl?
Yes.
Rob? Yes. Kohler?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you all for your work. Mr. Administrator.
Yes.
You have 2 items for us today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. First item is broadband feasibility study. As the board is aware, we've been discussing this throughout the summer and fall, the possibility of doing a study. And of course, last week we were at the township meeting and gathered input from those folks regarding their desire to have a study done like that. And there seemed to be a consensus from most of those attending that meeting that there was a desire to move forward. So I put on the agenda here to request approval to move forward with a Blandon Foundation grant of $25,000 to do a broadband feasibility study countywide. The county's commitment towards that would be $25,000 as well. The process, if approved, moving forward, the next grant application is due at the end of December. I'll take on completing that grant and getting that turned in. If chosen, the process then would be to hire a consultant, and at the recommendation of Blandon, they recommend appointing a task force to kind of work with the consultant and help guide the process. So assuming we get the grant, I'd be coming back with recommendations for forming a task force, which I would suggest we have 1 to 2 commissioners on. And then in the meantime here, be thinking of folks in the public that might be good fits for that task force, because that would be an important part of that whole process. And then as far as timeline, they say the process to complete a plan is typically 3 to 6 months, but I know Blue Earth County was at the same point we were in January, and their plan now is getting close to completion, probably finished in the spring. So look at a year to 15 months for the whole process, from grant time all the way to completion.
Right. And I'm assuming when you made the reference about being selected, that's a competitive grant with the Blandon for the match, so what allows us to petition quarterly or apply quarterly? Is that
correct? So
we may not get picked the first time out, so that may delay us based on assumption we get the grant, right?
The next round is March then.
Right, okay, all right.
Thank you.
So moved.
We have a motion to go ahead.
I'll second.
We have a second. Any other discussion?
Just, I was surprised by the township vote. I thought it'd be more evenly split.
I agree. So I think that allows us to not necessarily spend more time in education, but there's clearly an intent to, let's find out what's going on.
Yes.
So I think that's in our best interest. Anything else? Hearing none. what am I looking for?
All in favor.
Oh, all in favor, there we go, thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. You have another item for us?
I do addition here, just an update on the recycling contract. Al Christensen with Tri-County was at our workshop last week. And at that point, we had obtained quotes for our services both on the west and east side. On the west side, no change. Riverview, I believe, Riverview Sanitation and New Ulm would still have the quote for the west side services. Since then, we did obtain a quote from Waste Management, and they came in significantly lower than West Central Sanitation. And actually, I wasn't aware of this, but Al said West Central was a little hesitant in going past a year-to-year contract, just because of the recycling market the way it is. Waste Management is actually willing to go a 3-year contract with additional 2-year openers, basically annual openers. The West Central cost was $32.53 a month. Waste Management was $18.65.
Wow.
I'm assuming Waste Management, they are a large nationwide company, have additional outlets for recyclables compared to some of the smaller regional providers. So, so the change here, other than the provider, would be we were contracting as a county individually with our providers. Right now, Waste Management, and those of you that have sat on Tri-County probably know more about this than I do, but Waste Management has been providing the recycling services for LeSueur and Sibley for several years, I believe. So there's an existing Tri-County contract with just those 2 counties. What we would do under this proposal is we would merge into that contract. So it would be all 3 counties again, which it was many, many years ago. So this contract would not come to this board. It would go to the Tri-County board on December 18th, I believe. So no action really needs to be taken by this board, I guess, other than if there's comments or concerns with going this route.
Just so I'm clear, the Waste Management contract would deal with the east end?
On the east side,
East
correct.
end only, so.
So Nicollet's,
basically 111 east.
Yep, Nicollet, Northland, and St. Peter.
Okay. And then North Mankato's needs will continue to be serviced through Riverbend, or West.
They've got their own agreement with them, so.
Okay, what is, and just as an aside, how does North Mankato's operation pair with anybody that might be in a rural area that might be more proximal to the city of North Mankato versus, let's say, Nicollet, our next closest collection point? Do they have the option, or can they make their recyclable drop at North Mankato?
My understanding is they would still be able to use that facility. There's no real.
But we don't have a formal agreement.
We don't have a formal agreement. We technically really, well, I guess we do now, but after our agreement ends at the end of this year, we won't have that formal agreement.
Okay.
But my understanding in Al's conversations with West Central, which basically runs that facility now, is they're not worried about it. They're actually, right now, looking for material. So
okay,
it should not be an issue.
Shouldn't be an issue. Just
if it ever was,
then we'll have to address it.
We could add additional containers in North Mankato or Belgrade Township or wherever.
Okay.
So
just wanted to make sure that we were covering all that. Thank you. Anything else for Ryan on that topic? Okay. I think we're on to something else now. Probably me. Let's see. Did you have anything else?
Nothing else.
No, you're good?
No.
Okay. Chair's report. That's me. Let's see, since our last gathering to report, my activities included the SHIP quarterly meetings, the Healthcare Coalition meeting, department head meeting, special ditch meeting, our work session, multi-county HRA, and the Township Association meeting, which, as a result of which, I'm proud to say that we can move forward with our broadband survey, which I think is in our best interest going forward. Commissioner Lipke.
I went to the Minnesota River Ag Urban Partnership thing in Mankato. Mostly a lot of MPCA and PCA people. Went to the workshop with the rest of you, the township meeting with the rest of you. went along with, I got picked up by Blake and Kevin, went along to the Soil and Water Regional Meeting in Franklin. Was at the Social Service Dignitaries Breakfast with Jack, and that concludes.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Morrow.
The workshop, Maria and I, we went by the hospital CEO meet and greet. Oh, I went. Yeah. The our St. Peter meeting and the township meeting.
Commissioner Darrell.
I had the Region 9 Board of Directors meeting, my workshop. I'm referring to it as the Green Lake Road Tour. On my trip to Green Lake, I've done every county road between here and there and hit most of your road projects one direction or the other. Planning and zoning last Monday, I had a day of leading the ethnically diverse community session, our third one. Township officers and Round Nicollet Community Health Board conference call.
Commissioner Kollars.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minnesota Valley Action Council meeting, the board workshop. I attended a health crisis committee with Jody Fisner. Township meeting, TDS meeting, Minnesota Social Services meeting with Commissioner Lipke and about 40 other people, and yesterday's MTRAC meeting where we learned that influenza B is starting to move through the system, I guess, but it is covered by the vaccines that have been provided to us. And there's a new office manager in Jackie Friedrichs working now with MTRAC at Blue Earth County, which serves the 5-county area. I'll provide Mr. Crush the information on MTRAC, and that will do it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we've moved ahead with already commissioners' meetings and conferences that we have. Our annual meeting for AMC is coming up next month, and I believe Abby has all this tucked away someplace, right?
Where are we staying, Mr. Chair?
Wherever Abby tells us to stay.
Still the grand stay as of right now. We'll still maybe try to sneak in.
You still call him?
Grand
Okay.
State's not a bad place.
It might be worth the walk, actually. I know.
Well, is it a couple blocks away? Or?
Couple blocks.
Yeah.
2 blocks.
Okay.
North?
Right across 23.
Oh, across the road.
Across the road there.
Okay.
We can.
Crossing the road is the difficult part.
Yeah, I would agree. And to facilitate that, if they only give you one room, make sure Jack gets it.
Yeah.
So.
It is.
Yes. All right, anything else?
I hop it here.
Entertain a motion to approve per diems and expenses.
Wednesday. I'll move that.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam County Attorney, did you have anything you would like to share with us that we haven't been sharing?
In light of the hour, no, thank you.
No. Now she gets on her clock.
What did she say?
Due to the light of the hour.
Oh.
Yes.
I have court at 1 o'clock,
Okay,
so.
well.
Your dessert was very good.
Thank you.
For all of you that have still stuck with us, both staff, I want to wish you all from us a good holiday coming up. And thank you for all your efforts. I know it's been a Herculean year. We've got lots of changes, lots of things, lots of people, and that's what we're going to look for. And you're right, lots of water. So thank you all very much for that. And please let your staffs know that we may not see them directly, but we genuinely appreciate their efforts. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.